the eternal question. The desert night is quiet. Above the sands of Giza, stars wheel in their ancient patterns, the same configurations that watch the pyramids rise from nothing. Or perhaps the same stars that witnessed something far stranger, far more profound than the simple narrative history has offered. Tonight, we invite a journey into one of humanity's deepest mysteries. Not a journey of miles, but of mind. Not a quest for certainty, but for possibility. Allow the eyes to close gently. Feel the weight of the body against its resting place. Notice the breath, how it flows in and out, requiring no effort, no thought. The mind can release its grip on the concerns of the day. There is nowhere to be but here, nothing to do but listen. The pyramids stand as they have stood for millennia, massive, silent, enigmatic. Official history tells a simple story. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs, primitive tools, human labour, tombs for the dead. But beneath this comfortable narrative lie questions that have never been satisfactorily answered, anomalies that have been dismissed, evidence that has been ignored, possibilities that have been buried as thoroughly as any pharaoh. What if the story we have been told is incomplete? What if it is in some fundamental way wrong? What if the pyramids harbour secrets that would shake the foundations of everything we believe about human history, about our origins, about our place in the cosmos? As consciousness begins its gentle descent towards sleep, we will explore these questions together. There will be no rush, no urgency, only the slow unfolding of mystery, the careful examination of evidence, the patient consideration of possibilities. Let the body continue to relax. Let the breath deepen. Let the mind open to wonder. The pyramids of Egypt have been called tombs, temples, power plants, astronomical observatories, initiation chambers, resurrection machines. They have been attributed to pharaohs, to priests, to advanced ancient civilizations now forgotten, to visitors from distant stars. They have been dated to 4,000 years ago, to 10,000 years ago, to ages so remote that humanity as we know it did not yet exist. In the hours ahead, we will examine the evidence that orthodox archaeology prefers to overlook. We will consider theories that have been marginalized and dismissed. We will listen to the voices of researchers who have dared to question, to challenge, to propose alternatives to the accepted narrative. Not because alternative explanations are necessarily correct, but because the questions themselves are worthy of contemplation. Because mystery, approached with humility and openness, can be a gateway to deeper understanding. Allow the muscles to soften further. Notice any areas of tension and invite them to release. The jaw can relax. The shoulders can drop away from the ears. The hands can rest. Palms open or closed, whatever feels natural. There is nothing to hold on to tonight. Only the gentle flow of words, carrying awareness deeper into stillness. The monuments that defy time. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises from the desert plateau like a mountain conceived by geometry itself. Its base covers 13 acres. Its original height reached 481 feet toward the sky. It consists of approximately 2.5 million blocks of stone, each averaging 2.5 tons, some weighing as much as 70 tons. These are facts, numbers that can be measured, verified, agreed upon. But numbers alone cannot convey the reality of standing before this structure. The overwhelming sense of permanence, the impression of something that has always existed and will always exist. The feeling reported by countless visitors across millennia, that this is not merely a building, but something more. Something that consciousness recognizes even if the intellect cannot name it. The Great Pyramid is not alone. It stands as the largest of three major pyramids on the Giza plateau, accompanied by the pyramids attributed to Khafra and Menkaura. Together, these three structures form a pattern that has intrigued researchers for generations. Their arrangement mirrors, with remarkable precision, the three stars of Orion's belt. Not as those stars appear today, but as they appeared approximately 12,500 years ago, during the astronomical epoch known as the Age of Leo. This correlation was first proposed by Robert Bauval in what has become known as the Orion correlation theory. The alignment is not approximate or symbolic, it is precise. The pyramids match the position, the relative size, and even the slight offset of the third star. If this alignment is intentional, it suggests planning and astronomical knowledge far beyond what we attribute to the ancient Egyptians of the 4th dynasty. But perhaps it is coincidence. Perhaps it is modern wishful thinking, imposing patterns where none exist. This is what orthodox scholars maintain, yet the coincidences accumulate. The southern shaft of the King's Chamber points directly to where Orion's belt would have been visible in the night sky. The northern shaft points to the celestial pole. These are not general alignments. These are specific calculated orientations that require sophisticated astronomical knowledge and precise engineering. Let the mind rest with this image. 3 pyramids on the sand, 3 stars in the sky. Separated by distance incomprehensible to human scale, yet connected by intention, by design, by some purpose we have yet to fully understand. Feel the body sinking deeper into rest as we contemplate this mystery. The precision of the Great Pyramid's construction continues to astonish engineers and architects today. Its base is level to within less than an inch across its entire area of 13 acres. Its sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy that deviates by less than 4 minutes of arc. This is more precise than most modern buildings, despite the fact that the builders supposedly used primitive tools and basic surveying techniques. The blocks that form the pyramid's core are cut and fitted with remarkable precision. In many places, the joints between blocks are so tight that a razor blade cannot be inserted between them. This level of accuracy is difficult to achieve even with modern laser-guided equipment. How was it accomplished by Bronze Age workers using copper tools and stone hammers? The orthodox answer involves patience, manpower, and simple tools used skillfully. Hundreds of thousands of workers labouring for decades, moving and placing blocks with ropes, ramps and levers. It is an explanation that satisfies some, but leaves others with profound doubts. Not because ancient peoples were incapable of remarkable achievements, but because the specific technical challenges of the Great Pyramid seem to exceed what the proposed methods could accomplish. Consider the logistics. According to conventional chronology, the Great Pyramid was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, which lasted approximately 23 years. To place 2.5 million blocks in 23 years requires setting 1 block every 2 minutes, working day and night without pause. Even allowing for work only during daylight hours and accounting for seasonal variations, the pace required seems nearly impossible. Yet there the pyramid stands, solid, undeniable, real, built by someone somehow, for some purpose. The disconnect between the structure's demands and the proposed methods of construction is one of the first clues that something in the conventional narrative may be incomplete. As the body continues to relax, As breath flows slower and deeper, let awareness drift to the interior of the Great Pyramid. Inside its massive bulk lie chambers and passages that have provoked endless speculation. The King's Chamber, a room constructed of enormous red granite blocks, its dimensions incorporating mathematical relationships that encode fundamental constants. The Queen's Chamber, smaller but no less mysterious, its purpose still debated. The Grand Gallery, a corbelled, ascending passage that soars upward at a precise angle, its architectural sophistication unmatched in ancient construction, and beneath it all, carved into the bedrock beneath the pyramid, the subterranean chamber. Rough-hewn, unfinished according to some interpretations, deliberately left in a particular state according to others. A chamber that descends deep into the earth, accessible only through a narrow descending passage that drops at a constant angle into darkness. The arrangement of these chambers suggests intentional design rather than ad hoc construction. They are connected by passages of specific dimensions and angles. Air shafts, or what are called air shafts, extend from both the King's and Queen's chambers, though they do not reach the pyramid's exterior. Their purpose remains unknown. Ventilation seems unlikely given their small size and the fact that they were originally sealed. Astronomical alignments have been proposed, symbolic passageways for the pharaoh's soul, functional elements of some technology we no longer recognize. The granite blocks that form the King's Chamber are particularly interesting. Granite is an igneous rock, extremely hard, containing quartz crystals that have piezoelectric properties. When subjected to pressure, quartz can generate small electrical charges. The King's Chamber, constructed entirely of granite, forms a resonant cavity. Its dimensions create specific acoustic properties. When sound of certain frequencies is introduced into the chamber, it resonates, amplifies, creates standing waves. Was this intentional? Did the builders understand principles of resonance and acoustics, or is this another coincidence in a structure filled with them? Let the mind settle with these questions, not seeking immediate answers, but allowing the mysteries to exist in their fullness. The pyramids do not demand that we solve them. They simply stand, waiting, holding their secrets in stone. The problem of construction. The conventional explanation for how the pyramids were built relies on a few basic assumptions. The ancient Egyptians possessed copper tools and stone hammers. They used wooden sledges and log rollers to transport blocks. They built ramps, either straight or spiral, to raise blocks to higher levels as construction progressed. They had abundant manpower, organizing tens of thousands of workers in shifts. They had time, dedicating decades to each pyramid. This explanation appears in textbooks, documentaries, and museum displays. It has been repeated so often that it has achieved the status of established fact. But when examined closely, this explanation encounters significant problems. Problems that have been noted by engineers, architects and researchers for decades, yet continue to be minimized or dismissed by mainstream archaeology. The first problem is the hardness of the stone. The Great Pyramid's core consists primarily of limestone, a relatively soft sedimentary rock that can be worked with copper tools, albeit slowly and with great effort. But the pyramid also incorporates substantial amounts of granite, an extremely hard igneous rock. The granite beams that form the ceiling of the king's chamber weigh up to 70 tons each. Granite ranks 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Copper ranks 3. Stone hammers, whether limestone or harder varieties, are not significantly harder than granite. To shape granite with copper requires not sawing or chiseling in the conventional sense, but grinding with an abrasive. Sand or another hard material must be introduced between the copper tool and the granite, and the tool must be worked back and forth, slowly wearing away the stone. This is a painstakingly slow process. Experiments have shown that copper saws using sand as an abrasive can cut granite, but the rate of cutting is measured in millimeters per hour. To shape the massive granite blocks found in the pyramid would require months or years per block. Yet inside the Great Pyramid, there are dozens of these massive granite blocks. The walls of the king's chamber, the relieving chambers above it, the plug blocks in the ascending passage, all are granite, all are precisely shaped, all fit together with minimal gaps. If each block required months to shape, the timeline for construction becomes even more impossible. Some researchers have proposed that the ancient Egyptians possessed harder tools than we give them credit for. Bronze, properly alloyed and work-hardened, is harder than pure copper. Perhaps iron tools, despite the lack of evidence for their use in the 4th dynasty. Perhaps tools made from diorite or other hard stones, shaped and used as chisels or saws. These proposals address part of the problem, but do not fully resolve it. Even with harder tools, the sheer volume of precision stoneworking required for the pyramids represents a monumental expenditure of time and labour. The breath continues its gentle rhythm, in and out, requiring no thought, no effort. The body rests. The mind can rest as well, even as it contemplates these ancient puzzles. The second problem is transportation. The limestone blocks that form the pyramid's core were quarried locally from the Giza plateau itself. This explains their abundance and the feasibility of moving them to the construction site. But the granite came from Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. The casing stones, the fine white limestone that once covered the pyramid's exterior, came from quarries at Tura, across the Nile. Moving multi-ton blocks across such distances requires more than muscle power. It requires engineering, infrastructure, logistics. The conventional explanation proposes that blocks were transported by boat along the Nile, then moved overland to the construction site using sledges pulled by workers over log rollers or lubricated tracks. This method is plausible for lighter blocks, and there is evidence that the Egyptians moved large stones in this manner. Tomb paintings depict workers pulling statues on sledges. A famous relief shows a colossal statue being moved by multiple teams of workers, but these examples involve stones of a few tons at most. The largest blocks in the Great Pyramid weigh 70 tons. Some researchers have proposed that certain blocks, particularly those in the temples adjacent to the pyramids, may weigh over 100 tons. Experimental archaeology has attempted to replicate ancient stone-moving techniques. Teams of workers have successfully moved multi-ton blocks using ancient methods. but the largest blocks moved in these experiments have been in the range of 5 to 10 tons. Scaling up these methods to handle blocks 5, 10 or 20 times heavier presents exponential challenges. The number of workers required increases. The structural integrity of sledges and ropes becomes critical. The coordination required becomes vastly more complex, and even if we accept that such methods could work, we must consider the logistics of continuous construction. To maintain the pace required to complete the Great Pyramid in 23 years, blocks would need to arrive at the construction site and be placed at a rate that seems to exceed what human labour, regardless of numbers, could sustain. Let awareness rest with this image. Thousands of workers, organised in teams, pulling ropes attached to sledges, moving massive stones across the desert, the sun beating down, the sand shifting underfoot, the constant danger of ropes breaking, sledges collapsing, workers being crushed, day after day, year after year, for decades. It is an image of extraordinary human determination and capability. But is it an image of reality? Or is something missing from this picture? The third problem is the ramps. To raise blocks to the upper levels of the pyramid, some form of ramp or lifting mechanism would be required. The most common proposal is a straight ramp that increased in height and length as construction progressed. But a straight ramp tall enough to reach the pyramid's apex would be longer than the pyramid itself, and would require as much or more material than the pyramid. Where is the evidence of this ramp? Where did its material go? Alternative ramp designs have been proposed, a spiral ramp that wound around the pyramid's exterior, internal ramps built into the pyramid structure, a combination of methods for different construction phases. Each proposal addresses some problems while creating others. Spiral ramps must turn corners, requiring the impossibly precise maneuvering of multi-ton blocks on inclines. Internal ramps leave no clear archaeological evidence. Combination methods introduce complexity that seems inconsistent with the pyramid's clean, simple geometry. Some engineers have concluded that the ramp problem is so severe that the conventional explanation simply cannot work. They propose alternative methods, levers and counterweights, internal lift systems, techniques we have not yet imagined or rediscovered. But if alternative methods were used, methods sophisticated enough to overcome the ramp problem, we must reconsider what level of technological capability the builders possessed. The body's heavy now, sinking deeper into rest. The mind floats, tethered loosely to the voice, to the slow unfolding of mystery. There is no urgency to solve these problems, only the invitation to consider them, to hold them in awareness as we drift. The silence of evidence. One of the most peculiar aspects of the Great Pyramid is the absence of certain types of evidence we would expect to find if the conventional narrative were complete. There are no inscriptions in the pyramid identifying Khufu as its builder, no reliefs depicting its construction, no detailed records describing the methods used or the workers employed. This absence is remarkable because the ancient Egyptians were meticulous record keepers. They covered their temples and tombs with inscriptions. They left detailed accounts of royal achievements, military campaigns, building projects. The pharaohs were not modest. They proclaimed their deeds in stone, ensuring that future generations would remember their greatness. Yet the Great Pyramid, supposedly the greatest building project of Khufu's reign, the culmination of Egyptian architectural achievement, contains almost no writing. The only marks found in the pyramid that might identify Khufu are a few quarry marks in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. These chambers are accessible only through a narrow shaft and were not meant to be seen. The marks are rough, painted in red ochre, and include a cartouche that some interpret as Khufu's name. These marks were discovered by Colonel Howard Weiss in 1837 during his explorations of the pyramid. The authenticity of these marks has been questioned. Some researchers have suggested that Weiss, under pressure to make significant discoveries and aware of the financial backers expecting results, might have forged the marks. This is a serious accusation, and there is no definitive proof either way. The marks are consistent with known 4th Dynasty writing, but they are also simple enough that a knowledgeable forger could have reproduced them. The chambers in which they appear were, according to Weiss's account, sealed and undisturbed for millennia, yet the marks appear fresh, their pigment bright, showing little sign of the age. Whether authentic or forged, these marks are the only textual connection between Khufu and the Great Pyramid. For a structure of such immense importance, this is a remarkably thin thread of evidence. It is as if someone built the largest building in the world and forgot to sign it. Let the breath continue its slow, steady rhythm. Feel the chest rise and fall. Notice how the body knows what to do, how it continues its essential functions without conscious direction. Rest in this awareness. Beyond the absence of inscriptions, there is the absence of bodies. The Great Pyramid is called a tomb, yet no pharaoh's body has ever been found within it. The granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber is empty. It has been empty since the first recorded entry into the chamber. No trace of a burial has been discovered. No canopic jars, no funerary goods, no evidence that anyone was ever laid to rest in this structure. Orthodox archaeology explains this absence by suggesting that the pyramid was robbed in antiquity. Grave robbers broke in, removed the body and all valuable grave goods, and left only the empty sarcophagus, which was too large to remove through the passages. This explanation is plausible for some royal tombs. But the Great Pyramid presents unique difficulties for the robbery theory. Access to the interior chambers was sealed by massive granite plug blocks in the ascending passage. These blocks, each weighing several tons, were apparently slid down the passage after the pyramid was completed, sealing the upper chambers. To remove them would require enormous effort. Ancient robbers would have had to either pull the blocks back up the sloping passage, an almost impossible task, or circumvent them by tunneling through the adjacent limestone. Evidence suggests that robbers did eventually create a tunnel, the so-called Robber's Tunnel, which bypasses the plug blocks, but this tunnel is crude, hacked through the limestone with great effort. If robbers went to such trouble to reach the upper chambers, would they find nothing? No body? No treasure? Or had the chambers always been empty? An alternative possibility is that the Great Pyramid was never intended as a tomb. Its design, its precision, its mathematical and astronomical alignments suggest purposes beyond burial. The absence of a body is not evidence of successful robbery, but evidence that the structure served a different function. This interpretation is rejected by mainstream Egyptology but embraced by alternative researchers who see the pyramid as a temple, an initiatory chamber, a power generator, or a monument to encoded knowledge. The body continues to relax. Perhaps the eyes flutter gently beneath their lids. Perhaps the mind begins to drift, moving between waking thought and the loose imagery of approaching sleep. Let this movement happen naturally. There is no wrong way to experience this journey. Another form of absent evidence is the missing construction debris. Building the Great Pyramid would have generated enormous amounts of waste material. Stone chips from shaping blocks, broken tools, the remains of ramps and scaffolding, temporary structures for workers. Yet the plateau around the pyramid is remarkably clean. Some debris has been found, but not in quantities that match the scale of construction. Where are the villages that house the tens of thousands of workers? Where are the cemeteries for those who died during construction? And in a project lasting decades, there would have been many deaths. Where are the workshops where copper tools were manufactured and repaired? Some evidence of worker settlements has been found near the pyramids, but the scale seems modest compared to the workforce that would have been required. Mark Lehner, an Egyptologist generally supportive of the conventional narrative, has excavated what he believes to be a workers' village near the pyramids. The site shows evidence of food preparation, housing, and administrative activities. But even Lehner acknowledges that the settlement he uncovered could have housed only a few thousand workers, not the 100,000 often proposed for peak construction periods. This discrepancy between the expected evidence and the found evidence is troubling. It suggests either that our assumptions about the scale of the workforce are wrong, which raises new questions about how the pyramid was built, or that much evidence remains undiscovered, which seems unlikely given the extensive archaeological investigation of the Giza plateau over the past 2 centuries. The technology question. If we step back from the specific problems of construction and consider the Great Pyramid as a finished work, we encounter something remarkable. The structure demonstrates knowledge and capabilities that seem inconsistent with the technology attributed to its builders. The pyramid encodes mathematical constants in its dimensions. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is remarkably close to 2 pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its radius. This could be coincidence, a natural result of the pyramid's shape and proportions. or it could indicate that the builders understood the properties of circles and pi, a mathematical constant whose significance was supposedly not recognized until much later in human history. The pyramid's dimensions also encode relationships to the Earth itself. The structure's height, multiplied by 43,200, closely approximates the Earth's polar radius. The perimeter of the pyramid's base, multiplied by the same factor, approximates the Earth's equatorial circumference. These relationships are so close that they cannot be dismissed as coincidence, yet they require knowledge of the Earth's dimensions to a precision that was supposedly not achieved until the age of satellite measurements. How could the builders have known the size of the Earth? The ancient Greeks, 2,000 years after the pyramid's supposed construction, first calculated the Earth's circumference with reasonable accuracy. Eratosthenes, in the 3rd century BCE, used the angle of the sun at different locations and simple geometry to derive an estimate that was within a few percent of the true value. But this achievement came millennia after Khufu. How could the pyramid builders have possessed this knowledge? One possibility is that they did not. The mathematical relationships are coincidence or the result of researchers selectively choosing units of measurement that yield interesting results. Pyramidology, the study of mystical or mathematical properties of the pyramids, has a long history of seeing patterns that may not exist. Skeptics point out that if you measure any complex structure in enough different ways, you will eventually find some relationship that seems significant. This skepticism is healthy and necessary, but it does not entirely explain away the relationships that researchers have found. The precision is too consistent, the connections too numerous. Even if some proposed relationships are spurious, others seem to resist dismissal as mere chance. Allow the mind to rest with this uncertainty. Let the question remain open. In this space between sleep and waking, certainty is not required, only openness to possibility. The pyramid's astronomical alignments present similar puzzles. The structure is oriented to true north, with precision that deviates by less than 4 minutes of arc. Achieving this accuracy requires careful astronomical observation and sophisticated surveying techniques. The ancient Egyptians were capable astronomers, but the level of precision displayed by the Great Pyramid exceeds what we would expect from their known methods. The shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers are aligned to specific stars and constellations as they would have appeared when the pyramid was built. The southern shaft from the king's chamber points to where Orion's belt would have been visible. The northern shaft points to the celestial pole. These alignments are not general or approximate, they are exact, calculated to specific stars at specific epochs. If the pyramid was built around 2560 BCE, as Orthodox chronology maintains, these alignments make sense within the framework of 4th dynasty Egyptian astronomy and religion. Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. Alignment to Orion could represent the pharaoh's journey to join the gods in the afterlife. But if we entertain the possibility that the pyramid is older, much older, the alignments take on different significance. Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock have proposed that the Giza plateau represents a terrestrial map of the sky as it appeared around 2500 BCE, during the astrological age of Leo. At this epoch, the 3 pyramids would align precisely with Orion's belt, and the Sphinx, which faces due east, would gaze directly at its celestial counterpart, the constellation Leo, as it rose on the spring equinox. This theory is speculative and controversial. It pushes the construction of the pyramids back more than 7,000 years earlier than conventional dating. It requires us to imagine a civilization capable of such precise astronomical observation and massive construction existing at a time when humanity was supposedly still in the Stone Age, living in small hunter-gatherer bands. Yet the theory addresses certain anomalies. The water erosion patterns on the Sphinx, first noted by geologist Robert Schoch, suggest weathering by rainfall over extended periods. The Sahara has been largely arid for the past few thousand years, but it was wetter during the period ending around 10,500 BCE. If the Sphinx predates the currently accepted date, the erosion patterns make more sense. The body is heavy, soft, sinking into stillness. The mind floats like a leaf on water, drifting where the current takes it. There is no need to hold tightly to any theory or explanation. Let the possibilities exist side by side. The technical capabilities required to build the Great Pyramid continue to puzzle engineers. The blocks are not just stacked, they are carefully fitted, with joints that are remarkably tight considering the block's size and weight. In the King's Chamber, the granite blocks show no mortar in the joints. They are simply placed next to each other, held by their own weight and the precision of their shaping. Achieving such precision in stone requires sophisticated tools and techniques. Modern stonemasons working with pneumatic tools, diamond-tipped saws and laser levels can create similar precision, but only with significant time and expense. The ancient Egyptians supposedly used copper chisels, stone hammers, and sand as an abrasive. The difference in technology is profound. Some researchers have proposed that the ancient Egyptians possessed advanced tools that have not survived or have not been recognized in the archaeological record. Perhaps bronze or iron tools, despite the lack of widespread evidence for their use in this period. Perhaps hardened copper alloys with properties superior to what we assume. Perhaps techniques of shaping stone that we have not rediscovered. Methods that did not rely on cutting or grinding but on some other principle. The most controversial proposals suggest technologies far beyond anything attributed to ancient civilizations. Ultrasonic drilling, acoustic levitation, laser-like cutting tools. These proposals are dismissed by mainstream archaeology as pseudoscientific fantasy. There is no evidence for such technologies in ancient Egypt. No tools have been found, no depictions in art, no mentions in texts, yet the precision remains, the monuments stand, and the gap between what we believe the ancient Egyptians could do and what they apparently did do persists. The mystery of the King's Chamber. Deep within the Great Pyramid lies the King's Chamber, a room that has fascinated and perplexed researchers for centuries. It is a rectangular space, approximately 34 feet long, 17 feet wide and 19 feet high. The walls, floor and ceiling are constructed entirely of red granite, brought from Aswan over 500 miles away. The ceiling consists of 9 massive granite beams, each weighing approximately 50 tons. Above the king's chamber are 5 additional chambers, separated by granite beams and limestone walls. These are called the relieving chambers, so named because they were thought to relieve the weight pressing down on the king's chamber, preventing the ceiling from collapsing under the enormous mass of stone above it. The uppermost relieving chamber has a pointed roof constructed of massive limestone blocks, arranged in an inverted E, further distributing the weight. The engineering is impressive, demonstrating understanding of structural principles and concern for the stability of the internal chambers. But some researchers question whether the relieving chambers serve only a structural purpose. The king's chamber would have been stable with fewer relieving chambers. The multiple layers seem excessive for simple structural support. Perhaps they serve another function. The granite used in the king's chamber is interesting not just for its hardness but for its composition. Granite contains quartz crystals, which have piezoelectric properties. When subjected to pressure, quartz generates small electrical charges. The entire king's chamber is constructed of granite, forming what some researchers describe as a resonant cavity made of piezoelectric material. If sound of certain frequencies is introduced into the king's chamber, the room resonates. The dimensions and materials create acoustic properties that amplify specific frequencies while dampening others. Experiments have shown that chanting or playing musical instruments in the chamber produces unusual acoustic effects. The sound seems to fill the space, to vibrate not just in the air but in the stone itself. Why would the builders create a resonant chamber in the heart of the pyramid? If the structure is simply a tomb, why design it to resonate at specific frequencies? Orthodox archaeology suggests that acoustic properties were incidental, not intentional. The chamber was designed for structural and religious purposes. Any acoustic effects are side effects of the materials and dimensions chosen for other reasons. But alternative researchers see intentional design. They propose that the king's chamber was a space for initiation, for altered states of consciousness, for experiences beyond the ordinary. The combination of complete darkness, isolation, acoustic resonance, and possibly other factors we do not understand might have created conditions for profound psychological and spiritual experiences. Let the breath flow, slow and steady. Let the body continue to soften, to release any remaining tension. In the darkness behind closed eyes, imagine the king's chamber, the smooth granite walls, the heavy silence, the sense of being enclosed in the heart of a mountain of stone. What would it be like to spend a night there, alone in the darkness, surrounded by granite? The granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber is carved from a single block of red granite. It has no lid, or rather, no lid has been found that fits it. The sarcophagus is larger than the passages leading to the chamber, which means it must have been placed during construction before the chamber was completed. This suggests planning and intention. The sarcophagus was not an afterthought but an integral part of the chamber's design. The sarcophagus shows no inscriptions, no decorations. It is a plain granite box, highly polished on the interior, rougher on the exterior. When struck, it produces a resonant tone, deep and sustained. The entire chamber becomes a sounding box, the granite walls reflecting and amplifying the tone. If the chamber was used for initiatory purposes, the sarcophagus might have served as the place where the initiate lay, immersed in darkness and sound. The interior dimensions of the sarcophagus are interesting. The volume, calculated from precise measurements, is approximately the same as the volume of the Ark of the Covenant as described in the Old Testament. This correlation has led some researchers to suggest connections between the Great Pyramid and biblical traditions. The Ark was said to contain sacred objects and to possess extraordinary properties. Could the sarcophagus in the king's chamber have served a similar function? These speculations move us into territory that many scholars find uncomfortable. Connections between different ancient traditions, suggestions of shared knowledge or common sources, proposals of technologies or capabilities that exceed what orthodox history allows. Yet the correlations exist, whether or not we accept their significance. As awareness drifts, as the boundary between waking and sleeping becomes less distinct, consider the possibility that the Great Pyramid served purposes we have not imagined. That it was not simply a tomb, not simply a monument to a pharaoh's vanity, but something more complex, more sophisticated, more profound. The air shafts extending from the king's chamber present another puzzle. These narrow passages, approximately 8 inches square, extend from the north and south walls of the chamber, angling upward through the pyramid's mass. For many years they were thought to reach the pyramid's exterior, providing ventilation to the chamber. But exploration has revealed that the southern shaft is blocked by stone plugs and does not reach the exterior in a straightforward manner. The northern shaft's path is similarly complex. If the shafts are not for ventilation, what is their purpose? The most widely accepted explanation is that they are soul shafts, symbolic passages for the pharaoh's spirit to ascend to the stars. The southern shaft aligns with Orion's belt, representing Osiris. The northern shaft aligns with the circumpolar stars, the imperishable stars that never set, representing eternal life. This explanation fits within the framework of ancient Egyptian religion and cosmology, but it is an explanation based on symbolism and belief rather than physical function. The shafts are real, physical structures, carefully engineered and built with precision. They required significant effort to construct. Would the builders go to such trouble for purely symbolic purposes? Some researchers propose that the shafts served a technical function related to the chamber's acoustic properties or to some other aspect of the structure's purpose we do not yet understand. The shafts could channel air at specific angles, creating flows that affect temperature, humidity, or acoustic resonance within the chamber. They could serve as conduits for energies or forces that we no longer recognize or measure. These proposals venture into speculation, lacking the hard evidence that would convince skeptics. But they arise from the observation that the pyramid is full of features that seem over-engineered if their only purpose was to house a dead pharaoh. The structure suggests intentional complexity, multiple layers of meaning and function, purposes that we glimpse but do not fully comprehend. The mind drifts, thoughts becoming loose, fragmented. This is natural. There is no need to hold on to every word, every idea. Let consciousness flow where it will. The voice continues, a gentle current carrying awareness toward rest. The enigma of the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is one of the most distinctive architectural features within the Great Pyramid. It is an ascending passage that rises at an angle of approximately 26 degrees, the same angle as the pyramid's passages. But unlike the other passages, which are narrow and low, the Grand Gallery soars upward, its corbelled walls reaching a height of 28 feet. It is approximately 153 feet long, creating a space that is cathedral-like in its proportions and ambition. The construction technique used in the Grand Gallery is called corbelling, where each successive course of stone projects slightly inward from the one below it, creating a vault that gradually narrows toward the top. This technique distributes weight effectively and creates a strong, stable structure, but the precision with which the Grand Gallery is corbelled, the symmetry of its walls, the smoothness of its surfaces, all suggest skill and intention far beyond simple structural necessity. The Grand Gallery leads from the junction with the horizontal passage to the Queen's Chamber upward to the entrance of the King's Chamber. Along its length, the walls feature a series of slots or grooves cut into the stone. These slots run horizontally along both sides of the gallery, 27 pairs in total. Their purpose has been debated for as long as researchers have studied the pyramid. Some propose that the slots held wooden beams that supported a floor or a series of platforms. The Grand Gallery would then have been a workspace or storage area during construction, but the slots are too precisely cut, too uniform for such a mundane purpose. Others suggest they held blocking stones that could be released to seal the passage, yet no evidence of such stones has been found, and the mechanism by which they would have been held and released remains unclear. Alternative theories propose more complex functions. Christopher Dunn, a precision machinist who has written extensively about the pyramids, suggests that the Grand Gallery might have housed a series of resonators, structures that could vibrate at specific frequencies. The slots would have held these resonators in place. The Grand Gallery would then function as a harmonic amplifier, part of a larger system that involved the entire pyramid. This theory is speculative, requiring technologies and purposes that have no direct archaeological support. Yet Dunn's background in precision manufacturing gives him insights into the level of precision displayed in the pyramid's construction. The tolerances, the alignments, the material choices all suggest to him engineering rather than architecture, function rather than form. Allow the body to sink deeper. Feel the weight of limbs, the heaviness that comes with deep relaxation. The breath continues, slow and rhythmic, an anchor in the present moment even as the mind explores distant places and ancient times. The floor of the Grand Gallery is curious. It is not flat but features a central ramp flanked by narrow ramps on either side. The central ramp is smooth. The side ramps have regularly spaced holes drilled into them. These holes do not go all the way through the stone. They are shallow depressions, precise in their spacing and depth. What purpose could they serve? Some researchers suggest they held posts or supports of some kind. Others propose they are simply footholds to aid in climbing the steep incline. But the precision and regularity suggest intentional design rather than ad hoc construction. Every feature of the Grand Gallery, from its corbelled ceiling to the slots in the walls to the holes in the floor, speaks of careful planning and specific purpose. If we accept that the Grand Gallery served some function beyond simple access to the King's Chamber, we must consider what that function might have been. The space could have been used for ceremonies, its height and proportions creating an impressive setting for rituals. The acoustic properties of the corbelled vault would amplify sound, creating effects that could have been spiritually or psychologically powerful. Or the Grand Gallery could have been part of a technical system, serving purposes we no longer understand. The chambers and passages of the Great Pyramid form a complex three-dimensional structure. They are not randomly placed but carefully positioned relative to each other and to the pyramid as a whole. The Grand Gallery connects key chambers positioned at a specific angle, constructed with specific materials. Perhaps it was a conduit for energy or sound, a resonant channel that linked different parts of a larger mechanism. These proposals require us to imagine the Great Pyramid as more than a passive monument. They suggest an active structure designed to do something, to function in some way that we have lost the knowledge to recognize. This is a radical departure from conventional archaeology, which sees the pyramid as essentially static, a container for a burial and a symbol of royal power. Yet the evidence of precise engineering, of features that seem to exceed requirements for simple burial, of mathematical and astronomical relationships encoded in stone all point toward intentional complexity. The Grand Gallery, like so many aspects of the Great Pyramid, invites questions that have no easy answers. The mind may be wandering now, thoughts drifting between the words, attention loosening its grip. This is the natural rhythm of approaching sleep. The conscious mind releases its need to understand everything, to categorize and explain. In its place comes a more fluid awareness, open to mystery, comfortable with not knowing. At the top of the Grand Gallery, where it meets the entrance to the King's Chamber, there is a step. This step, called the Great Step, is a large block of granite that one must climb to enter the final horizontal passage leading to the King's Chamber. The Great Step is more than 3 feet high, larger than any normal stair. Why such an obstacle at this crucial transition point? Was it structural necessity, symbolic significance, or practical function in some system we no longer comprehend? Above the Great Step is the final low passage leading to the King's Chamber, a narrow granite corridor that requires one to duck and move carefully. The transition from the soaring height of the Grand Gallery to this constricted passage is dramatic. If the pyramid was designed for initiatory purposes, this sequence of spaces, from narrow ascending passage to Grand Gallery to constricted passage to the final chamber, might represent stages of a spiritual journey. Confinement, expansion, final trials, and ultimate arrival. But these are interpretations imposed by modern minds seeking meaning. The ancient builders left no guidebook, no explanation. The stones speak through their arrangement, their precision, their relationships. But the language is one we struggle to read. The Queen's Chamber and its mysteries. Below the king's chamber, accessed by a horizontal passage that branches from the ascending corridor, lies the queen's chamber. This designation is a misnomer given to the chamber by early Arab explorers who assumed it was intended for the pharaoh's queen. In reality, its purpose is as mysterious as any feature of the pyramid. The queen's chamber is smaller than the king's chamber, approximately 18 feet long by 17 feet wide, with a corbelled ceiling that reaches about 20 feet at its apex. The walls are limestone rather than granite, lacking the polished perfection of the upper chamber. The floor is rough, unfinished in appearance, though whether this represents incomplete work or intentional design remains debated. Like the king's chamber, the queen's chamber has two shafts extending from its walls. For many years, these shafts were believed to be similar to those in the king's chamber, pointing to astronomical alignments. But exploration revealed that the queen's chamber shafts do not open into the chamber itself. They are sealed at the interior by a thin layer of limestone, as if the builders started to create openings but then covered them over. This discovery raised immediate questions. If the shafts are sealed, they cannot be air shafts. If they do not open into the chamber, how could they serve as soul shafts for the deceased? What purpose could they possibly serve? In the 1990s, a small robot was sent into the southern shaft of the Queen's chamber. It travelled approximately 200 feet before encountering a limestone block with two copper pins embedded in it. The block appeared to seal the shaft, but it was unclear what lay beyond. Years later, another exploration drilled a small hole through this block. A camera inserted through the hole revealed an empty space, and then another block, suggesting multiple barriers within the shaft. What were these blocks sealing? Why the copper pins? The mystery deepened rather than resolved. The presence of copper pins is particularly interesting. Copper was valuable in ancient Egypt, not something to be wasted on hidden internal structures unless it served an important purpose. Some researchers have speculated that the pins were electrical contacts, part of some long-defunct system. Others suggest they were handles for moving or removing the blocks, though from inside a sealed shaft this explanation seems problematic. Let the body rest completely now. Feel the surface beneath, supporting without effort. The breath flows, the heart beats. Life continues its essential rhythms while awareness drifts in contemplation of ancient mysteries. The Queen's chamber features a niche cut into its eastern wall. This niche is an architectural oddity, corbelled like a smaller version of the Grand Gallery, rising vertically into the wall. It is deep and tall, clearly intentional and carefully constructed. But for what purpose? No inscriptions, no decorations, no functional elements have been found within it. It is simply an empty, corbelled recess in the wall. Traditional Egyptology suggests the niche may have been intended to hold a statue of the deceased pharaoh or a representation of a deity. But no statue has been found, no evidence that one was ever placed there. The niche is not in a position that would be particularly prominent for ceremonial purposes. It is simply there, precisely made, serving no obvious function. Christopher Dunn, in his analysis of the pyramid as a power plant, proposes that the niche housed some kind of chemical reservoir or reaction chamber. His theory, controversial and rejected by mainstream archaeology, suggests that the Queen's chamber was part of a system that generated hydrogen gas. The niche would have held chemicals that, when combined with water flowing through specific channels, produced hydrogen that would then travel through the pyramid's passages and chambers, serving some purpose related to energy generation or transformation. this theory requires us to reimagine the pyramid entirely. It is not a building but a machine. The passages are not corridors but conduits. The chambers are not rooms but reaction vessels. The entire structure functions as an integrated system, designed by engineers who understood principles of chemistry, acoustics, and energy that we attribute to much later periods of human development. The theory is supported by some intriguing evidence. Chemical residues have been found in the Queen's Chamber, though their origin and significance are debated. The floor of the chamber shows signs of salt deposits, suggesting that liquid once flowed or pooled there. The shafts, sealed at the chamber but open at their deeper ends, could serve as vents or conduits for gases. The copper pins could be electrical contacts, but the theory also requires accepting that our fundamental understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization is wrong, that a culture we believe was focused on religion, ritual, and the afterlife was actually engaged in sophisticated engineering projects. That knowledge we attribute to the scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries was possessed thousands of years earlier and then lost. This is a difficult leap. It requires explaining not just how such knowledge existed, but why it disappeared, why it left no clear trace in the historical record, why subsequent Egyptian construction shows no sign of similar sophistication. The Great Pyramid stands as an apparent outlier, far more advanced than structures that came before or after. This pattern is suspicious. Technologies develop gradually. Knowledge builds on prior knowledge. The sudden appearance of advanced capability, followed by its apparent disappearance, challenges our understanding of cultural development. Yet there the Queen's Chamber sits, its sealed shafts, its corbelled niche, its chemical residues, its unfinished floor, each feature inviting questions, offering few certain answers. The stones are real, the measurements can be verified, the mysteries remain. As the mind drifts deeper, as thoughts become less linear, more dreamlike, consider the possibility that both explanations contain truth. The pyramid could serve religious and symbolic purposes while also incorporating technical sophistication. Ancient peoples were not simple, they could hold complex, multi-layered understandings. A structure could be tomb, temple, and technical achievement simultaneously. These categories need not be mutually exclusive. The subterranean chamber. Deep beneath the Great Pyramid, carved into the bedrock itself, lies the subterranean chamber. To reach it, one must descend through a narrow passage that angles downward from the pyramid's entrance, dropping approximately 350 feet through the pyramid's mass, and then another 30 feet into the bedrock below. The descending passage is claustrophobic, less than 4 feet high and 3.5 feet wide, forcing anyone attempting to traverse it to crouch or crawl. The angle of descent is steep, approximately 26 degrees, matching the angles found throughout the pyramid's internal passages. The walls are smooth limestone, precisely cut, maintaining their dimensions with remarkable consistency over the entire length of the passage. The subterranean chamber itself is a stark contrast to the precision found elsewhere in the pyramid. It appears rough, unfinished, chaotic. The floor is irregular with channels and pits cut into the rock. The walls show signs of extensive excavation, but lack the polished surfaces of the upper chambers. The ceiling is corbelled in places, carefully structured, while other areas appear roughly hewn. Orthodox interpretation suggests that the subterranean chamber represents an abandoned plan. Perhaps it was the original burial chamber, later deemed inadequate, leading to the construction of the Queen's chamber and then the King's chamber higher in the structure. The rough appearance indicates work that was begun but not completed, abandoned when plans changed. But this explanation raises questions. Why descend so deep into bedrock if the chamber was merely a preliminary design? The effort to excavate the descending passage and chamber would have been enormous. Why not simply abandon it at an earlier stage and begin the upper chambers? Why maintain the descending passage with such precision if it led only to an abandoned failure? Alternative interpretations suggest that the rough appearance of the subterranean chamber is intentional rather than accidental. It represents a deliberate contrast to the finished chambers above. In initiatory traditions, descent into darkness and chaos often precedes ascent into light and order. The subterranean chamber could represent the underworld, the realm of chaos, the beginning of a symbolic journey that leads upward through the pyramid to the King's chamber and beyond. The chamber features a shaft that descends even deeper into the bedrock. This shaft, called the pit, drops approximately 30 feet and then ends, seeming to go nowhere. Early explorers hoped it might lead to hidden chambers or passages, but extensive exploration has found nothing beyond the shaft itself. It is simply a hole in the ground, carefully excavated, descending into darkness, serving no apparent purpose. Feel the breath, slow and deep. Feel the body, heavy and still. In the darkness behind closed eyes, imagine that descent. The narrow passage angling down, the weight of stone above, the air growing cooler, denser. The final arrival in a rough chamber deep beneath the pyramid, the pit descending even further into blackness. What would it feel like to stand there, alone in that ancient darkness? Some researchers have noted that the subterranean chamber lies on the vertical axis of the pyramid, directly below the apex. If one were to draw a line from the pyramid's peak straight down through its centre, it would pass through or very near the subterranean chamber. This positioning might be significant. The chamber could represent the lowest point of a vertical shaft of space running through the pyramid's heart, from the depths of the earth to the heights of the sky. In esoteric traditions, such a vertical axis often represents a connection between different realms of existence. The underworld, the earthly realm, the heavens. The subterranean chamber would then mark the nadir, the point of deepest descent, the place where the journey begins or where certain trials must be faced. But these are symbolic interpretations, frameworks of meaning we impose on stone and space. The chamber itself offers little to confirm or deny such readings. It simply exists, rough and dark and deep, at the end of a precisely cut passage beneath millions of tons of carefully stacked stone. The air in the subterranean chamber is said to have unusual qualities. Some visitors report feeling pressure changes, temperature variations, or unusual sounds. These effects could be due to the chamber's depth, the configuration of passages providing ventilation or blocking it, the thermal properties of limestone and granite absorbing and radiating heat differently. Or they could be psychological, the product of expectation, and the profound strangeness of being so deep beneath such a massive structure. Yet accounts of unusual experiences in the subterranean chamber span centuries. Early explorers, modern tourists, researchers working in the space, many report similar sensations. A heaviness in the air, a sense of presence or significance, sounds that seem to come from nowhere. These could all be explicable through physics and psychology, or they could indicate that the chamber serves purposes or possesses properties we have not yet understood. The mind grows quieter now. Thoughts are fragmented, dreamlike. This is the natural progression towards sleep. There is no need to follow every word, every idea. Let awareness float, tethered loosely to the voice, drifting where it will. The mysteries of the pyramid can wait. They have waited for millennia. They will wait through the night, through dreams, through rest. The question of age. How old is the Great Pyramid? Orthodox Egyptology places its construction during the 4th dynasty, around 2560 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. This dating is based on several lines of evidence. The architectural style consistent with other 4th dynasty structures, the quarry marks found in the relieving chambers, the historical context provided by ancient Egyptian chronologies and king lists, and the general progression of pyramid construction from earlier, simpler forms to the sophisticated design of Giza. This timeline places the Great Pyramid approximately 4,500 years in the past. Ancient by any measure, yet within the span of recorded human civilization. The Egypt of Khufu's time was not primitive. It was a sophisticated society with writing, mathematics, organized labor, and an established religious and political system. That such a society could undertake massive construction projects is entirely plausible, but some researchers question this timeline. They point to anomalies and inconsistencies that suggest the pyramid might be older, perhaps much older, than conventional dating allows. These challenges to orthodox chronology have been dismissed by mainstream archaeology as pseudoscientific speculation, yet they persist, supported by evidence that deserves consideration even if it does not conclusively overturn the established narrative. The first line of questioning involves the Sphinx. This massive statue, carved from bedrock on the Giza plateau, traditionally has been dated to the same period as the pyramids, attributed to Khafre, who is believed to have built the second pyramid. The Sphinx faces due east, aligned with the sunrise on the spring equinox. Its body is that of a lion, its head that of a human, possibly representing the pharaoh. In the early 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch examined the erosion patterns on the Sphinx and reached a controversial conclusion. The weathering appeared to be caused primarily by rainfall rather than wind and sand. The Sahara has been relatively arid for the past few thousand years. Sustained rainfall sufficient to cause the observed erosion patterns would require us to push the Sphinx's date back to a period when the region was wetter, before the desert dried. This would place the Sphinx at 8,000 to 10,000 years old or older, predating Egyptian civilization as we know it. Schoch's conclusions have been challenged by geologists and Egyptologists who propose alternative explanations for the erosion. Some suggest that the weathering could be caused by groundwater, by chemical processes in the limestone, or by a combination of factors that do not require significantly different dating. The debate continues, with neither side fully convincing the other, but if Schoch is correct, if the Sphinx is significantly older than conventional dating allows, what does this mean for the pyramids? The Sphinx and the pyramids are part of the same complex, positioned in relationship to each other, seemingly conceived as an integrated design. If one structure is older, might the others be as well? Or were the pyramids built later, additions to a site that was already sacred or significant? Allow the body to settle even deeper into rest. The breath continues its gentle rhythm. The voices are current, carrying awareness through ideas and questions. No destination required, only the journey itself. The astronomical alignments of the pyramids present another challenge to conventional dating. As mentioned earlier, the layout of the three pyramids at Giza corresponds to the three stars of Orion's belt. But this correspondence is most precise not for 2560 BCE, but for approximately 2500 BCE. At this earlier epoch, the pyramids would align perfectly with Orion's belt, and the Sphinx would gaze directly at its celestial counterpart, the constellation Leo, rising on the eastern horizon at the spring equinox. This correlation forms the basis of the theory proposed by Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock, suggesting that the Giza complex represents a terrestrial map of the sky as it appeared during the age of Leo. The theory is elegant and would explain certain features of the site's layout, but it requires accepting that sophisticated astronomical observation and massive construction projects were undertaken more than 12,000 years ago, during a period when humans are supposed to have been hunter-gatherers living in small bands. The conventional understanding of human history does not allow for advanced civilization at such an early date. Agriculture began around 10,000 BCE. The first cities emerged around 4000 BCE. Writing appeared around 3200 BCE. These are approximate dates, but they represent the general progression of human cultural development. A civilization capable of building the pyramids in 10500 BCE would overturn this entire sequence. Yet the absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. If an advanced civilization existed before the end of the last ice age, before the massive climate changes that transformed the planet around 10,000 BCE, much of its legacy could have been destroyed or buried. Sea levels rose dramatically as glaciers melted. Coastlines changed. Entire landscapes were submerged or eroded. A civilization concentrated in regions now underwater or deeply buried would leave little trace for archaeologists to find. This line of reasoning ventures into speculative territory. It requires imagining a lost civilization, an advanced culture that predates known history, that possessed knowledge and capabilities later forgotten or destroyed. This is the realm of myth, of legends of Atlantis and other vanished lands. Most scholars reject such scenarios as fantasy unsupported by solid evidence, but myths often contain kernels of truth. Flood legends appear in cultures around the world, suggesting a shared memory of catastrophic inundations, possibly the sea level rises that accompanied the end of the Ice Age. Egyptian texts speak of followers of Horus, mysterious figures who brought knowledge in the distant past. Greek writers like Plato wrote of Atlantis, advanced civilization destroyed by cataclysm. Could these stories preserve memories of real events, real peoples now lost to time? The question of the pyramid's age remains unresolved. The conventional date of 2560 BCE is supported by substantial evidence and fits within the established framework of Egyptian history. The alternative dating to 10,500 BCE or earlier is supported by intriguing correlations but requires accepting massive revisions to our understanding of human development. Between these positions lies uncertainty, the possibility that the truth is more complex than either simple narrative allows. As consciousness drifts, as the boundary between waking and sleep becomes ever more permeable, rest in this uncertainty. Not all questions have answers. Not all mysteries can be solved. The pyramids stand in the desert, keeping their secrets, inviting wonder, defying simple explanation. Let this be enough. Let the questions remain, held gently without urgency or need for resolution. The mathematical mysteries. The Great Pyramid is, among other things, a mathematical text written in stone. Its dimensions, proportions, and relationships encode knowledge that seems remarkably advanced for the period of its supposed construction. Whether this encoding was intentional or coincidental remains one of the enduring debates surrounding the structure. The most famous mathematical relationship involves pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. If one takes the perimeter of the pyramid's base and divides it by twice the height, the result is approximately 3.14, the value of pi. This relationship has been known for well over a century and has been the subject of extensive analysis and debate. Skeptics argue that this relationship is either coincidental or a natural consequence of the pyramid's shape. If the builders used a measuring system based on rolling a wheel or circle, they would automatically incorporate pi into their dimensions without necessarily understanding it as an abstract mathematical constant. The relationship could emerge from practical measurement rather than theoretical knowledge. but proponents of intentional encoding point out that the pyramid's dimensions yield this relationship with remarkable precision. The original pyramid, before its casing stones were removed, had a base perimeter of approximately 1760 cubits and a height of approximately 280 cubits. The ratio of 1760 to 560, twice the height, is pi to within a fraction of a percent. This level of accuracy seems unlikely to arise purely by chance or as an incidental byproduct of the building process. The pyramid also encodes relationships to the Earth itself. The structure's height, multiplied by 43,200, closely approximates the Earth's polar radius. The base perimeter, multiplied by the same factor, approximates the Earth's equatorial circumference. The number 43,200 is itself significant, appearing in various ancient texts and mythological systems as a processional number related to the slow wobble of Earth's axis. These relationships require knowledge of the Earth's dimensions. How could the builders have measured the Earth? The conventional explanation is that they could not have, and therefore these relationships must be coincidental. But the precision and consistency of the relationships challenge the coincidence hypothesis. If one mathematical relationship appears by chance, perhaps. But multiple relationships, all using the same scaling factor, all yielding accurate results. Let the breath flow, effortless and slow. Let the body rest in perfect stillness. The mind can be still as well, observing these mysteries without needing to grasp them fully, allowing them to exist in their enigmatic beauty. The interior dimensions of the king's chamber encode mathematical relationships as well. The chamber's length, width, and height are in the ratio 2.1.1 with respect to each other, creating what is known as a double cube. This proportion has been used in sacred architecture across various cultures, considered harmonious and spiritually significant. The volume of the granite coffer in the king's chamber is approximately equal to the volume of the Ark of the Covenant as described in the Bible. This correlation has led some researchers to suggest connections between the pyramid and biblical traditions, perhaps indicating shared knowledge or common sources. Orthodox scholars dismiss this as numerical coincidence, noting that ancient measuring systems were variable and that finding equivalencies between structures from different cultures requires selective use of measurements. The pyramid's internal passages and chambers are positioned according to precise geometric relationships. The Grand Gallery's angle, the positions of the chambers along the vertical axis, the lengths of passages, all seem to follow mathematical principles. Some researchers have proposed that the entire internal structure represents a geometric diagram encoding knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, or cosmology in three-dimensional form. Christopher Dunn has noted that many features of the pyramid display the kind of precision more associated with machining than traditional stone carving. Tolerances of thousandths of an inch, surfaces polished to near optical flatness, right angles accurate to minutes of arc. This level of precision is extraordinary for any era, but particularly for one supposedly equipped only with copper chisels and stone hammers. Modern attempts to replicate pyramid construction techniques have succeeded in demonstrating that ancient tools can work stone, but the results typically show far less precision than what appears in the actual pyramid. Experimental blocks are roughly shaped, approximately fitted. The pyramid's blocks, particularly the granite elements, show refinement that seems to exceed what the proposed tools and methods should achieve. This precision suggests either that the builders possessed tools and techniques not represented in the archaeological record, or that they expended extraordinary effort on refinement, going far beyond what was necessary for structural purposes. Either explanation challenges conventional understanding in different ways. The mathematics encoded in the pyramids suggest knowledge that history tells us was developed centuries or millennia later. Pi was not rigorously calculated until the Greeks. The Earth's dimensions were not accurately measured until Eratosthenes in the 3rd century BCE. Precision measurement and machining developed during the Industrial Revolution. Yet the pyramid displays all of these capabilities, standing as an apparent anomaly, a structure that seems displaced in time, possessing knowledge from the future or inherited from a forgotten past. As the mind drifts, as thoughts become less connected, more fragmentary, let these mathematical mysteries dissolve into the general wonder that the pyramid evokes. The numbers are real, the measurements can be verified, the relationships exist, but their meaning, their origin, their purpose all remain shrouded in uncertainty. And in this uncertainty lies a strange comfort, a reminder that the world holds mysteries beyond our understanding, that the past is not as settled and known as we sometimes believe. The theories of alternative history. Beyond the orthodox narrative of 4th dynasty construction by Egyptian workers under Pharaoh Khufu, numerous alternative theories have been proposed to explain the Great Pyramid. These theories range from the marginally unorthodox to the wildly speculative, each attempting to address the anomalies and mysteries that conventional explanation seems unable to fully resolve. One of the more moderate alternative theories proposes that the pyramid is older than conventional dating suggests, but was still built by an advanced civilization of humans. This civilization, possessing sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, predated the Egypt we know from historical records. The pyramid would then be a legacy of this earlier culture, possibly one destroyed by the catastrophic climate changes at the end of the Ice Age around 10,000 BCE. This theory attempts to honour the evidence for advanced knowledge encoded in the pyramid while avoiding the most speculative claims. It proposes a human origin, but pushes that origin back in time, allowing for the development of sophisticated capabilities before known history begins. The Egyptian civilization of the dynastic period would then have inherited the site, regarding the pyramids as sacred structures from a distant past, possibly attempting to emulate them in later construction projects but never quite matching their sophistication. The challenge for this theory is the lack of clear archaeological evidence for such an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization. If such a culture existed, possessed advanced knowledge, and built massive structures, where are the other traces of their existence? Why do we find no cities, no lesser buildings, no tools or artifacts that would indicate their presence? Proponents argue that evidence could have been destroyed or buried by the climate upheavals of the Ice Age's end, but this explanation requires that almost all traces vanished, which seems improbable. A more controversial theory proposes that the pyramid was built with the assistance of some form of lost technology. This technology might have been developed by the ancient builders themselves or inherited from an even older source. Proposals include ultrasonic tools for cutting stone, acoustic levitation for moving blocks, or energy systems that could manipulate gravity or harness forces we no longer understand. These technological theories attempt to address the engineering challenges of pyramid construction by proposing capabilities beyond those attributed to Bronze Age civilizations. If the builders possessed advanced tools, the precision and scale of construction become more explicable. The tight-fitting joints, the massive granite beams, the overall coordination of the project, all would be more feasible with sophisticated technology. But here again, the absence of evidence is problematic. No such tools have been found. No depictions in Egyptian art show unusual technologies. No texts describe lost knowledge. Proponents argue that knowledge could have been deliberately hidden, reserved for initiates, or simply lost through historical accidents. But the more capability we attribute to the builders, the harder it becomes to explain why they left no clear trace of these capabilities. The body is very relaxed now, perhaps approaching sleep. The voice continues, a gentle murmur, offering ideas without insisting on their truth, possibilities without demanding belief. Let consciousness drift where it will. Some of the most speculative theories propose non-human origins for the pyramid. The suggestion that extraterrestrial beings either built the pyramid or provided knowledge and assistance to human builders has been popularized by various writers and documentaries. This explanation would certainly resolve many of the mysteries. If the builders had access to highly advanced technology and knowledge from a spacefaring civilization, the precision, the astronomical alignments, the encoded mathematics, all would be straightforward consequences of that superior capability. The extraterrestrial theory has little support among serious researchers. It requires accepting not just that alien life exists, but that it visited Earth in the distant past and involved itself in human affairs. The evidence for such visitation is ambiguous at best. Ancient art and texts that some interpret as depicting aliens or spacecraft can almost always be understood as representing terrestrial subjects through symbolic or stylized means. The pyramids, however impressive, do not require alien technology to explain, only human capabilities perhaps somewhat more advanced than we typically attribute to the period. Moreover, the extraterrestrial theory tends to diminish human achievement. It suggests that our ancestors were incapable of the sophistication displayed in the pyramids, that such works could only be accomplished with outside help. This assumption is both unprovable and somewhat insulting to ancient peoples. Human ingenuity, given sufficient motivation, organization, and time, has accomplished remarkable things throughout history. The pyramids may represent the upper end of Bronze Age capability, but this does not mean they exceed all possible Bronze Age capability. Another alternative theory frames the pyramid as a power plant or energy-generating structure. Christopher Dunn has proposed that the pyramid functioned as a hydrogen generator, using chemical reactions in the Queen's chamber to produce hydrogen gas, which then flowed through the passages to the King's chamber, where acoustic resonance transformed the chemical energy into microwave energy that was broadcast from the pyramid's peak. This theory is detailed and technically sophisticated. Dunn, drawing on his background in precision manufacturing, has analysed the pyramid's features through an engineering lens. The granite used throughout the structure contains quartz, which has piezoelectric properties. The king's chamber could function as a resonant cavity. The shafts could serve as waveguides. The entire structure, according to this view, was designed as an integrated system for energy generation. The power plant theory addresses many anomalies. It explains the precision which would be necessary for a functional machine. It explains features like the sealed shafts and the granite coffer, which serve no obvious purpose as tomb elements, but could be functional components of an energy system. It explains why the pyramid was built to such massive scale, why it incorporates materials from distant sources, why it contains no burial and no inscriptions about burial. Yet the theory requires accepting that Bronze Age Egyptians, or whoever built the pyramid, possessed knowledge of chemistry, acoustics, and electromagnetic radiation centuries before these principles were supposedly discovered. It requires imagining a purpose for large-scale energy generation in a society that had no obvious use for such power. What would they do with microwave energy? How would they transmit or store it? What need did they have that required such a massive investment in infrastructure? Dunn acknowledges these questions, but maintains that the evidence points toward functional engineering rather than symbolic architecture. The precision is too great, the features too specific, the integration too complete for the structure to be merely a tomb or temple. Something else was intended, even if we no longer fully understand what that something was. Let the mind rest with these various theories. Each attempts to solve the puzzle of the pyramids by proposing different builders, different methods, different purposes. Some are more plausible than others, some rest on firmer evidence. But all arise from the same fundamental recognition. The conventional narrative does not fully satisfy. Questions remain. Anomalies persist. The pyramids continue to challenge our understanding. The Egyptian evidence. What do the ancient Egyptians themselves tell us about the pyramids? What evidence do we have from Egyptian texts, inscriptions and traditions regarding how and why these structures were built? The answer is both surprising and frustrating. Very little. The pyramids themselves contain almost no inscriptions explaining their construction or purpose. Later, pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties include pyramid texts, religious inscriptions covering the interior walls, but the 3 great pyramids of Giza are virtually silent, their walls bare of writing, offering no clear statement of intent from their builders. Egyptian texts from later periods mention the pyramids but provide limited detail. The pyramids were already ancient mysteries to the Egyptians of the New Kingdom, more than 1,000 years after their supposed construction. They were regarded as monuments of the Old Kingdom, built by great pharaohs of the past, but the specific methods of construction were not described in surviving documents. Greek historians who visited Egypt recorded what they were told by Egyptian priests. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, provides the most detailed ancient account of pyramid construction. He describes the use of machines for lifting blocks, the organization of labor forces, the time required for construction. His account is the foundation of many conventional explanations for how the pyramids were built. But Herodotus was writing 2,000 years after the pyramids were supposedly constructed. He was recording traditions and stories, not eyewitness accounts. Moreover, Herodotus is known to have included fantastic and inaccurate information in his histories. His reliability on Egyptian matters is uncertain. He may have been given simplified or mythologized accounts by his informants, or he may have misunderstood what he was told. The Egyptian king lists and chronologies include Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, the pharaohs traditionally associated with the 3 Giza pyramids. These associations are long-standing and seem to have been accepted by ancient Egyptians themselves. But the king lists do not describe pyramid building. They simply list rulers and their reign lengths. The connection between specific pharaohs and specific pyramids comes from later tradition and interpretation rather than contemporary documentation. The breath continues steady and slow. The body rests in stillness. These questions of evidence and interpretation drift through consciousness like clouds across a desert sky, observed but not grasped, present but not pressing. The inventory stela, a stone tablet found at Giza, presents an interesting complication to the conventional narrative. This stela, carved during the 26th dynasty, more than 2,000 years after Khufu, contains an inscription stating that Khufu found the Sphinx already existing when he came to the Giza plateau. The inscription suggests that Khufu built a temple near the Sphinx, but did not create the Sphinx itself, which was a monument from an earlier age. Mainstream Egyptology regards the inventory stela as historically unreliable, a later invention or confusion. The style of carving and the content of the inscription place it firmly in the 26th dynasty, a period when there was significant interest in Egypt's ancient past and a tendency to attribute great antiquity to famous monuments. The stela is considered a pious fiction, an attempt by later Egyptians to connect contemporary religious observances to the most ancient times possible. But if we take the inventory stela at face value, it suggests that even in ancient times, there was a tradition that some monuments at Giza predated the 4th dynasty. This would align with the alternative theories proposing greater antiquity for the Sphinx and possibly the pyramids. The Egyptian priests of the 26th dynasty would have had access to records and traditions now lost to us. Perhaps they preserved knowledge that the monuments were older than the 4th dynasty pharaohs, even if they incorrectly attributed specific actions to Khufu. This interpretation is speculative, reading significance into a document that most scholars dismiss as unreliable, yet it illustrates the difficulty of using ancient texts. Do we trust only contemporary sources, of which there are almost none for pyramid construction? Do we trust later traditions which may preserve genuine knowledge but also include errors and inventions? How do we distinguish between accurate historical memory and mythologized legend when the sources are separated from the events by millennia? Egyptian religious texts provide some insight into how the Egyptians viewed the pyramids. The pyramid texts inscribed in later pyramids describe the pharaoh's journey after death, ascending to the sky, transforming into a star, joining the gods. The pyramid itself is described as a stairway to heaven, a means of ascent, a vehicle for the pharaoh's spiritual transformation. These texts suggest that the pyramid served religious and symbolic purposes, facilitating the pharaoh's transition from earthly ruler to divine being. The structure was not merely a tomb, but a transformation chamber, a place where the ordinary became eternal. This understanding fits within the framework of Egyptian religion, with its intense focus on the afterlife, on the preservation of the body, on the journey of the soul. But even these religious interpretations leave questions. If the pyramid's purpose was to house the dead and aid their afterlife journey, why are the Great Pyramid's chambers empty? Why the elaborate internal architecture, the precisely aligned shafts, the complex system of passages? A simple burial chamber would suffice for housing a body and grave goods. The Great Pyramid's design seems to exceed functional requirements for a tomb, suggesting additional purposes or meanings. Perhaps the answer lies in the concept of multifunctionality. The pyramid could serve as tomb, temple, monument, astronomical observatory, and repository of encoded knowledge simultaneously. Ancient peoples did not necessarily separate the practical, the religious, and the symbolic as sharply as modern thinking does. A structure could fulfill multiple purposes, each valid, each intentional, each interwoven with the others. As consciousness drifts deeper, as the voice becomes a gentle murmur barely noticed, let these questions of Egyptian evidence and interpretation dissolve. The ancient Egyptians have left us their monuments standing in the desert, solid and real. The texts and traditions are fragmentary, ambiguous, open to multiple readings. We peer back across millennia, trying to understand minds and beliefs that were fundamentally different from our own. Certainty eludes us. Mystery remains. The labour question. One of the most persistent debates surrounding pyramid construction involves the workforce. How many people were required? How were they organised? What motivated them to undertake such monumental labour? The conventional narrative proposes tens of thousands of workers, organised in rotating shifts labouring for decades to complete each pyramid. But this explanation faces logistical and social questions that deserve examination. The Great Pyramid required approximately 2.3 million blocks of stone. If constructed in 23 years, as conventional chronology suggests for Khufu's reign, this requires placing approximately 800 blocks per day, every day, for more than 2 decades. Even accounting for work only during daylight hours and seasonal variations, the pace is extraordinary. Each block must be quarried, shaped, transported, and precisely positioned. The coordination required is immense. Experimental archaeology has shown that small teams of workers can move multi-ton stones using ancient methods. Ropes, sledges, log rollers. These simple tools can accomplish remarkable things when used skillfully. But scaling up from experimental demonstrations to the reality of continuous construction at the required pace presents challenges. The logistics of quarrying, the organisation of transport, the precision of placement, all must function smoothly and simultaneously. Some estimates suggest that a workforce of 20,000 to 30,000 workers would have been required during peak construction periods. These workers would need housing, food, water, medical care, tools, and supervision. Supporting such a population would require substantial infrastructure and resources. Where did these workers come from? How were they fed? Where did they live? Archaeological evidence for worker settlements near the pyramids has been found, but the scale seems modest compared to the workforce numbers often proposed. Mark Lehner's excavations have uncovered what appears to be a worker village, bakeries, and administrative buildings. The site could have housed perhaps a few thousand people. If the pyramid workforce was larger, where are the other settlements? Or were the workforce estimates too high? Let the body sink deeper into rest. Feel the complete surrender of muscle tension, the full release into stillness. The breath flows without effort, the mind drifts without direction. An alternative model proposes a smaller, more skilled workforce. Instead of massive numbers of labourers, the pyramids might have been built by a core group of skilled stonemasons, engineers and craftsmen, supplemented by seasonal labour for specific tasks. This model would require less infrastructure and fewer resources, but would extend the construction timeline. Precision work by skilled artisans proceeds more slowly than crude labour by masses of workers. This model has appeal because it addresses the quality of the pyramid's construction, the precision of the stonework, the sophistication of the design. The integration of the various elements all suggest skilled execution rather than simple brute force. Skilled workers take pride in their craft, work carefully, produce results that exceed minimum requirements. The Great Pyramid shows evidence of such care, but a smaller workforce compounds the timing problem. If fewer workers were involved, construction would take longer, requiring either that the pyramid was built over multiple reigns or that our assumptions about construction duration are incorrect. Multiple reign construction would complicate succession and planning, requiring unusual continuity of purpose across generations. The question of motivation also arises. What inspired these workers to undertake such extraordinary labour? The conventional explanation suggests a combination of religious devotion, social obligation and practical benefit. Workers were fed and housed, receiving payment in goods rather than money. They participated in a great religious project, building an eternal monument for their god-king. They were fulfilling social obligations, contributing to the state's most important work. This explanation is plausible, consistent with what we know of ancient Egyptian society, but it assumes a level of social control, organisation and shared belief that may be idealised. Were workers truly motivated by religious devotion, or were they conscripted labour, forced to participate regardless of personal belief? Did they see their work as sacred, or as an onerous burden imposed by distant authority? The tomb of Hemunu, Khufu's vizier, contains an inscription mentioning overseeing work for the pharaoh. This provides some evidence for organised construction during Khufu's reign, but the inscription is brief and non-specific. It does not describe pyramid building in detail. Later traditions attribute Humunu with a role in pyramid construction, but these traditions are centuries removed from the events. Alternative theories propose very different models of labour organisation. If the pyramid was built by an earlier civilization, the workforce might have been organised according to different principles, motivated by different beliefs, operating with different social structures. If advanced technology was involved, the workforce might have been smaller, more specialised, focused on operating and maintaining equipment rather than moving stones by hand. Some of the most controversial proposals suggest that the labour was somehow assisted by paranormal or supernatural means, levitation, either through acoustic methods or through mental powers. Assistance from advanced beings, either extraterrestrial or from lost terrestrial civilizations. These proposals attempt to resolve the labour problem by introducing capabilities beyond normal human potential. Such proposals are dismissed by mainstream archaeology as fantasy. There is no evidence for levitation, no credible reports of stones being moved by mental power or acoustic vibration. The laws of physics as we understand them do not allow for such phenomena, and introducing supernatural explanations abandons the attempt to understand the pyramids through empirical investigation. Yet the proposals persist, arising from the perception that conventional explanations are inadequate. If the labour question cannot be satisfactorily answered using known methods, perhaps unknown methods were involved. This reasoning is seductive but scientifically unsound. The proper response to gaps in conventional explanation is to refine the explanation, to gather more evidence, to develop better models, not to leap to supernatural alternatives. The mind grows very quiet now. Thoughts are sparse, disconnected. The voice is barely registered, a murmur in the background of fading consciousness. Let awareness drift towards sleep. The questions of labour, of organisation, of motivation can wait. They have waited for millennia. They will be there tomorrow, unchanged, enduring, patient as the stones themselves. The acoustic mysteries. Sound holds a peculiar place in the study of the Great Pyramid. The structure's internal chambers and passages display acoustic properties that some researchers believe were intentional design features, while others regard as incidental byproducts of the pyramid's geometry and materials. The debate illustrates the difficulty of distinguishing between intentional function and fortunate accident in a structure built so long ago. The king's chamber, constructed entirely of granite, acts as a resonant cavity. When sound is introduced, the chamber amplifies specific frequencies while dampening others. The granite walls, being hard and smooth, reflect sound efficiently, The room's dimensions create standing wave patterns for certain frequencies, causing these frequencies to resonate powerfully while others dissipate. Experiments have been conducted in the king's chamber using various sound sources. Chanting, drumming, playing musical instruments all produce unusual acoustic effects. Specific notes seem to hang in the air, sustained by the chamber's resonance long after the sound source stops. The experience of sound in this space is qualitatively different from sound in ordinary rooms. The granite seems to vibrate. The air seems thick with sound. The entire space becomes a musical instrument. Why would the builders create such acoustic properties? If the pyramid was purely a tomb, if the king's chamber was simply meant to house a sarcophagus and protect it for eternity, acoustic design would be irrelevant. But if the chamber served ritual purposes, if ceremonies were conducted there, if the space was used for initiations or altered states of consciousness, then acoustic properties would be highly relevant. Many ancient traditions use sound as a tool for spiritual practice. Chanting, singing, drumming, these create altered states of consciousness, facilitate meditation, induce trance. The acoustic properties of the king's chamber would amplify these effects, making the space particularly powerful for such practices. Spending time in the chamber, surrounded by resonating sound in complete darkness, could produce profound psychological and spiritual experiences. The granite coffer in the king's chamber contributes to the acoustic effects. When struck, the coffer produces a deep, resonant tone that fills the chamber. The frequency of this tone, approximately 438 Hz, is close to the modern musical note A, though slightly lower. Some researchers propose that the ancient tuning systems were based on different frequencies than modern equal temperament, and that 438 Hz or nearby frequencies had special significance. Let the breath slow even further. Notice the spaces between breaths, the moments of stillness. In these spaces, awareness rests, not quite awake, not quite asleep, suspended in between. The Grand Gallery, with its corbelled ceiling and long narrow proportions, also displays interesting acoustic properties. Sound travels down the gallery's length, reflecting off the walls, creating complex interference patterns. Some frequencies are reinforced, others cancelled. The slots in the walls might have held structures that further modified the acoustic environment, though what these structures were and how they functioned remains speculative. John Reed, an acoustic engineer, has studied the pyramid's sound properties and proposed that the structure was designed as a sonic instrument. The various chambers and passages form different resonant cavities, each tuned to specific frequencies. Together they create a complex acoustic system, capable of producing powerful vibrational effects. Reed suggests that initiates might have undergone experiences in these spaces that involve specific sound frequencies, darkness, and possibly other sensory modifications, leading to profound altered states. This theory fits with broader patterns in ancient architecture. Many sacred sites around the world display sophisticated acoustic properties. Newgrange in Ireland, the Hippodrome of Halsaflieni in Malta, Chichen Itza in Mexico, all have structures that create unusual acoustic effects. The builders of these sites clearly understood something about sound and its effects on human consciousness. The Great Pyramid, with its precise construction and granite chambers, would represent an apex of such acoustic engineering. But could Bronze Age builders really understand acoustics in such detail? The science of acoustics as we know it developed relatively recently. The mathematical description of sound waves, the understanding of resonance and frequency, the ability to calculate and predict acoustic properties, all emerged in the past few centuries. How could ancient peoples design acoustic systems without this theoretical framework? The answer may be empirical knowledge rather than theoretical understanding. Ancient builders did not need mathematical formulas to recognize that certain spaces amplified sound. They could build, test, modify, test again, gradually refining the design through trial and error. Over generations, knowledge of what shapes and materials produced what acoustic effects could accumulate passed from master builder to apprentice, preserved in practical tradition rather than written theory. This explanation is plausible and does not require attributing modern scientific knowledge to ancient peoples, but it does require acknowledging that ancient builders were keen observers, careful experimenters, and sophisticated designers. They worked within different frameworks of knowledge, using different methods, but achieving results that we, with all our theoretical understanding, find impressive. The infrasound theory proposes that the pyramid generates or focuses frequencies below the range of human hearing. Infrasound can affect human physiology and psychology in various ways. Low frequencies can cause feelings of unease, nausea, disorientation, or conversely, feelings of awe and presence. Some researchers propose that the pyramid's design creates infrasound through wind flowing over its shape or through resonance in its chambers. If the pyramid generates infrasound, this could explain some of the unusual experiences reported by visitors. The feelings of presence, the sense of weight or pressure, the psychological effects of being in the chambers, all might be influenced by inaudible sound frequencies affecting the nervous system. This would be an inadvertent effect if the builders did not understand infrasound, or an intentional effect if they did. The debate continues with no definitive resolution. The acoustic properties are real, measurable, repeatable, but whether they are intentional design features or fortunate accidents, whether they served functional purposes or simply existed as interesting byproducts, remains uncertain. The stones are silent on the question, keeping their secrets as they have for millennia. The global pyramid phenomenon. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not unique. Pyramidal structures appear in cultures around the world, separated by vast distances and apparently independent development. Egypt, Mesoamerica, South America, Asia all have pyramid traditions. This global distribution raises intriguing questions about human cultural development, possible connections between ancient civilizations, and the significance of the pyramid form itself. The pyramids of Mesoamerica, particularly those built by the Maya and Aztec civilizations, show striking similarities to Egyptian pyramids despite being separated by an ocean and thousands of years. Both cultures built massive step pyramids, used them for religious purposes, aligned them to astronomical phenomena, and incorporated them into larger sacred complexes. The similarities are detailed enough to seem more than coincidence. Yet mainstream archaeology maintains that these similarities result from independent development. The pyramid is a stable, practical form for large stone structures. A broad base provides stability. Successive smaller layers are easier to construct than vertical walls beyond a certain height. Any culture attempting to build large stone monuments might naturally arrive at pyramid-like shapes. Moreover, the differences between Egyptian and Mesoamerican pyramids are significant. Egyptian pyramids are true pyramids, with smooth sides meeting at an apex. Mesoamerican pyramids are step pyramids, with terraces and flat tops often supporting temples. Egyptian pyramids are solid stone structures with internal chambers. Mesoamerican pyramids are often rubble filled with stone facades. The construction techniques, purposes, and cultural contexts differ substantially, yet the similarities persist. Both cultures chose to build mountains out of stone. Both associated these structures with the afterlife, with gods, with the heavens. Both aligned their pyramids to celestial phenomena, particularly to stars and to the movements of the sun. Both incorporated these structures into religious complexes that served as the centers of their civilizations. Some researchers propose that these similarities indicate contact between the cultures or descent from a common source. If a maritime civilization capable of transoceanic travel existed in the distant past, it could have influenced both regions, spreading architectural knowledge, religious concepts, and astronomical observations. This would explain the similarities without requiring us to accept that identical complex ideas arose independently in isolated cultures. The evidence for ancient transoceanic contact is controversial. Some artifacts found in unexpected locations suggest trade or travel. Cocaine and tobacco residues have been found in Egyptian mummies, though these plants are native to the Americas. Maps purportedly from the ancient world show details of geography that should have been unknown. Legends in many cultures speak of visitors from across the sea, bringing knowledge and civilization. But each piece of evidence is debatable. The cocaine and tobacco findings could be contamination or misidentification. The ancient maps could be later fabrications or misinterpreted documents. The legends could be mythological rather than historical. Mainstream scholarship generally rejects the idea of significant pre-Columbian contact between the Old and New Worlds, finding the evidence insufficient and the independent development explanation adequate. Let the mind rest with this mystery. Feel the body completely relaxed, completely still. The breath flows on its own. Consciousness drifts, untethered, free. In China, the pyramids of Xi'an represent another instance of the global pyramid phenomenon. These structures, only relatively recently studied by Western archaeologists, are earthen mounds covering what may be tombs of ancient emperors. They are not stone pyramids like those in Egypt, but they are pyramidal in form, massive in scale, and associated with royal burial and religious significance. The Chinese pyramids suggest that the impulse to build large pyramidal structures for royal and sacred purposes appeared independently in yet another major civilization. The form seems to resonate with something fundamental in human psychology or cultural evolution. Perhaps pyramids naturally arise when societies reach a certain level of organization, when they have the resources for massive projects and the religious or political motivations to undertake them. Indonesia has recently revealed structures that some researchers claim are ancient pyramids. Gunung Padang, a site in West Java, consists of a hill with stone terraces and structures. Some geologists and archaeologists who have studied the site propose that beneath the visible structures lies a much older pyramid, possibly dating to 10,000 BCE or earlier. This would make it the oldest pyramid in the world, predating Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years. The Gunung Padang claims are highly controversial. Many archaeologists dispute the interpretation, suggesting that the site is a natural hill with later human-made structures built on top. The dating methods used have been questioned. The idea of a pyramid dating to the end of the Ice Age contradicts conventional understanding of human cultural development at that time. Yet, if the claims are even partially correct, if there is a significant ancient structure beneath Gunung Padang, it would revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric civilization. It would suggest that sophisticated construction and social organization developed far earlier than currently believed, possibly in regions that have not been the focus of archaeological attention. The global distribution of pyramids invites speculation about shared human impulses, about common cultural developments, about possible connections between ancient peoples. The pyramid form, rising from earth to sky, from base to apex, from many to one, carries symbolic power that transcends individual cultures. It represents ascension, hierarchy, connection between earthly and divine, stability, permanence, and focus. Perhaps pyramids appear globally because they express something fundamental about human spiritual and social aspirations. Perhaps they appear because ancient peoples, separated by geography but united in their humanity, found similar solutions to similar problems. Or perhaps they appear because knowledge of pyramid building spread from a common source, transmitted across distance and time in ways we have not yet recognized. The questions remain open. The pyramids stand on multiple continents, in multiple cultures, separated by oceans and millennia. They speak to shared human achievement, whether that achievement arose independently or through connection. They invite us to see our ancestors not as isolated primitives, but as participants in a global story of human development, more connected and more capable than we sometimes imagine. The mystery of the missing tools. If the pyramids were built using the tools and methods proposed by conventional archaeology, we should expect to find abundant evidence of those tools. Copper chisels worn down by cutting stone, stone hammers fractured from pounding, wooden sledges and rollers broken during transport, the remains of ramps and scaffolding. Yet the archaeological record provides surprisingly little of this expected debris. Some tools have been found: copper implements, stone hammers, examples of the kinds of tools that would have been used, but the quantities are small, far less than would be expected if tens of thousands of workers laboured for decades. Where are the mountains of broken tools? Where are the quarrying and shaping implements used to prepare 2.3 million stone blocks? One possibility is that tools were valuable and were recycled or reused until completely worn out. Copper was precious in Bronze Age Egypt. A broken tool would be melted down and recast rather than discarded. Stone hammers, when fractured, might be broken further and used as fill or incorporated into construction. Wooden elements would rot, burn, or be repurposed, leaving little trace. This explanation is reasonable, but requires that recycling and reuse were nearly complete. Not a single tool could be lost, dropped into a crevice, buried by accident. The clean-up of the construction site would have had to be extraordinarily thorough, removing all traces of the enormous industrial effort that building the pyramids would have required. Another possibility is that the tools used were not the tools we expect. If the builders possessed harder or more sophisticated implements, tools made of materials we have not recognized, or that have not survived, the absence of known tool types would be less problematic. Bronze tools, properly hardened, exceed copper in cutting ability. Iron tools, if used despite the lack of widespread evidence, would be superior still. Tools made of hard stone, carefully shaped, could cut softer stone effectively. But here again, we face the absence problem. Where are these superior tools? If iron was used in the 4th dynasty, why do we find no other evidence of it? If bronze was standard, why does the archaeological record emphasize copper? If hard stone tools were common, where are the workshops where they were manufactured, the stockpiles of finished and broken tools, the infrastructure of tool production? The breath continues, soft and slow. The body rests in complete stillness. These questions drift through consciousness like clouds, observed but not seized, present but not urgent. Some researchers have proposed that certain features of the pyramid blocks suggest the use of advanced tools. Core samples taken from granite blocks show straight, circular holes drilled with apparent ease. The rate of drilling, calculated from the spiral marks inside the holes, seems to exceed what copper tools using sand as an abrasive could achieve. Petrie, the renowned Egyptologist who carefully measured the pyramids in the 19th century, noted that the drilling rate implied tremendous pressure and cutting ability. Modern attempts to replicate the drilling using ancient methods have had mixed results. It is possible to drill granite with copper and sand, but the process is slow, much slower than the rates Petrie calculated from the ancient holes. Either the ancient workers possessed techniques that made drilling more efficient, or they used harder tools that cut more quickly, or Petrie's calculations were incorrect. The precision of some granite surfaces in the pyramid suggests sophisticated finishing techniques. Surfaces are flat to within thousandths of an inch across large areas. Edges are straight and square. The level of refinement seems to exceed what would be necessary for structural purposes and what would be achievable with simple hand tools used patiently. Christopher Dunn has argued that these precision features indicate machining rather than hand tooling. Modern machinists recognize the signs of machine work. The specific patterns of marks, the consistency of dimensions, the perfection of angles and surfaces. Dunn sees similar signs in the pyramid's granite elements and concludes that the builders possessed machine tools, lathes, mills, and precision instruments. This conclusion is controversial. It requires attributing to Bronze Age Egypt technological capabilities that we associate with the Industrial Revolution. It requires explaining why such capabilities left no other clear trace. why they were not used in other applications, why they disappeared so completely that all knowledge of them was lost. Dunn acknowledges these difficulties but maintains that the evidence of the stones themselves must be taken seriously. If the work looks like machine work, if it displays tolerances consistent with machining, if it shows characteristics that hand tooling does not produce, then we must consider that machines were involved, regardless of how implausible that seems given our assumptions about ancient technology. The alternative is to accept that ancient craftsmen, using simple tools and extraordinary patience, achieved results that seem impossible. That they cut granite with copper, drilled precise holes with sand and bow drills, polished surfaces to near optical flatness with abrasive paste and endless rubbing. That they had time, skill, and dedication beyond what we can easily imagine. This explanation requires us to revise our assumptions about ancient capabilities upward, to recognize that pre-industrial peoples, working within different frameworks of time and value, could accomplish feats that seem miraculous by modern standards, that craft knowledge, passed from master to apprentice over generations, could rival or exceed the capabilities of modern technology in specific applications. Both explanations require accepting something difficult. Either ancient peoples possessed advanced tools we have not recognized, or they achieved advanced results with simple tools through means we have not fully replicated. The missing tools remain missing. The precision work remains real. The mystery persists. The casing stones and the original appearance. The Great Pyramid we see today is not the structure as it was originally built. The pyramid has lost its outer casing, the smooth limestone skin that once covered its entire surface. What remains is the step-like core structure, rough and eroded, bearing little resemblance to the gleaming monument that once stood in the desert. The casing stones were made of fine white limestone quarried at Tura, across the Nile from Giza. This limestone is finer and whiter than the local stone used for the pyramid's core. The casing blocks were carefully cut and polished, fitted together with joints so tight that a blade could not be inserted between them. When in place, these stones created a smooth, continuous surface from base to apex. The effect would have been dramatic. A pyramid of white stone, its surface polished to reflective brightness, would have been visible for miles across the desert. Under the Egyptian sun, it would have gleamed, a man-made mountain of light, impossible to ignore, overwhelming in its presence. The ancient descriptions that survive speak of the pyramid's beauty, its brightness, its appearance of being covered in light. At the pyramid's apex was a capstone, the pyramidion, said to have been covered in gold or electrum, an alloy of gold and silver. This capstone would have caught the sun's first rays at dawn and its last rays at dusk, blazing like a star. The symbolism is clear. The pyramid connects earth and heaven, its apex touching the divine, its base rooted in the mortal world. Most of the casing stones were removed over the centuries, taken to build mosques, palaces, and other structures in Cairo. An earthquake in the 14th century loosened many stones, making them easier to remove. The stripping of the pyramid was systematic, as generations of builders found convenient quarried stone waiting to be repurposed. Only a few casing stones remain at the pyramid's base, giving us a glimpse of the original appearance. Let the mind grow still. Let thoughts slow and space out. The boundary between waking and sleeping blurs. Consciousness drifts in a state of not quite either, simply floating, simply present. The removal of the casing stones exposed the core structure, which was not meant to be seen. The core blocks are more roughly finished, with larger gaps between them. The step-like appearance is a consequence of the construction method, each layer of core blocks receding slightly from the one below, creating the internal structure that the casing would hide. Some researchers have studied the few remaining casing stones intensively. The precision of the cutting and fitting is remarkable. The outer surface is perfectly flat and smooth. The joints between blocks are nearly invisible, sealed with a thin layer of mortar that is in some places thinner than a fingernail. The blocks are not all the same size but vary to accommodate the slight curvature of the pyramid's faces. Yes, curvature. The faces of the Great Pyramid are not perfectly flat but slightly concave, curving inward by a small amount toward the center of each face. This curvature is subtle, not visible to the eye under normal conditions, but detectable through careful measurement and visible from the air under specific lighting conditions. The purpose of this curvature is debated. Some suggest it serves a structural purpose, helping to prevent the outer layers from bowing outward under their own weight. Others propose astronomical or mathematical significance, the curvature encoding some relationship or ratio. Still, others suggest it is simply an aesthetic choice, the builders recognizing that perfect flatness would appear slightly bowed due to optical effects, and introducing a compensating curve to make the faces appear truly straight. Whatever the reason, the concave faces demonstrate sophisticated design and execution. Each casing stone had to be cut to slightly different angles to create the overall curve. The variation is minute, but it had to be consistent across thousands of blocks. The precision and planning required are extraordinary. The casing stones also shed light on the construction sequence. The stones show evidence of having been worked in place after installation, with fine tooling marks indicating final adjustments made on site. This suggests that the builders placed blocks slightly oversized and then trimmed them to final dimensions, ensuring perfect fit. This method requires more work but produces superior results. The mortar between casing stones has been analysed and found to be of high quality, containing materials that make it hard and durable. Interestingly, the exact composition cannot be perfectly replicated using modern techniques. The ancient mortar is in some ways superior to modern cement, more flexible, more resistant to weathering, bonding more effectively with the limestone. How the Egyptians developed this superior mortar formulation remains unclear. The original appearance of the Great Pyramid, gleaming white with a golden cap, would have made it not just a monument, but a landmark visible from extraordinary distances. Travellers approaching Egypt from any direction would have seen it, a beacon announcing the presence of a great civilization. The psychological impact of such a structure, in an age when most buildings were small and impermanent, would have been profound. The symbolism of light is significant in Egyptian religion. The sun god Ra was central to Egyptian worship. The pyramid covered in reflective white stone would have been a terrestrial sun, a man-made source of brilliance. The connection between the pharaoh, the pyramid, and solar divinity would have been visually obvious, reinforced every time the sun struck the polished surfaces. Some researchers have proposed that the casing stone served functional as well as aesthetic purposes. The smooth surface would shed sand and wind, protecting the internal structure. The tight joints would prevent water infiltration during rare rains. The reflective surface might have had thermal properties, helping to regulate temperature within the pyramid or creating air currents that provided ventilation to internal chambers. More speculatively, the casing stones might have had electromagnetic properties. Limestone is an insulator. The massive bulk of the pyramid, covered in insulating stone, could theoretically store or generate electrical charge under certain conditions. If the capstone was conductive metal and the internal chambers contained piezoelectric granite, the pyramid might have functioned as a large capacitor or electrical component. This theory is part of the broader power plant hypothesis and shares its speculative nature and lack of conventional acceptance. As consciousness drifts deeper into the realm between waking and sleep, let the image of the original pyramid rest in the mind. White stone gleaming, golden cap blazing, a mountain of light in the desert. Whether tomb, temple, or something else entirely, it was certainly a wonder, an achievement that demanded attention and inspired awe. Even in its stripped and weathered state, the pyramid retains power. How much more overwhelming it must have been when new, when complete, when it stood as its builders intended. The legacy and influence. The Great Pyramid's influence extends far beyond its own time and place. It has inspired countless other structures, influenced architectural thinking across millennia, and captured the imagination of generation after generation. From ancient times to the present, people have looked at the pyramid and seen something extraordinary, something worth emulating or understanding. The pyramid form became standard for royal tombs in Egypt. After the Great Pyramid, later pharaohs built their own pyramids, though none matched the scale or precision of Giza. The pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties are smaller, less carefully constructed, but they carry on the tradition. They contain pyramid texts, religious inscriptions that the Great Pyramid lacks, providing insight into the beliefs and purposes that motivated pyramid building. As Egyptian civilization evolved, pyramid building eventually ceased. The New Kingdom pharaohs built their tombs in the Valley of the Kings, underground chambers hidden in the cliffs, no longer advertising their location with massive monuments. Perhaps the pyramids proved too vulnerable to robbers. Perhaps religious beliefs changed. Perhaps the resources required for pyramid building were no longer available or were directed to other purposes. But the pyramids remained, ancient even to later Egyptians, monuments from a golden age. They were maintained, studied, incorporated into religious practices. The Greek travellers who visited Egypt were awed by them. The Roman conquerors were impressed. When Arab armies arrived in Egypt, they found the pyramids already ancient beyond reckoning, mysterious in origin, impossible to ignore. Medieval Arab scholars wrote about the pyramids, recording legends and attempting explanations. Some believed the pyramids were built before the biblical flood, repositories of ancient knowledge preserved against catastrophe. Others thought they were granaries built by the biblical Joseph. These explanations mixed history, myth, and religious tradition, attempting to incorporate the pyramids into the larger story of human civilization as understood by medieval Islamic culture. European scholars and explorers who reached Egypt brought their own interpretations. Renaissance thinkers saw the pyramids as examples of ancient wisdom, products of a sophisticated culture that possessed knowledge later lost. Enlightenment scholars approached them more systematically, measuring, mapping, theorizing about construction methods and purposes. The birth of Egyptology as a discipline in the 19th century brought scientific rigor to pyramid studies, though many mysteries remained. The body is completely at rest now. Breathing is soft, almost imperceptible. The mind floats in a space between thoughts, awareness present but not active, observing but not analyzing. Let this floating continue, this gentle drift toward complete rest. Napoleon's expedition to Egypt at the end of the 18th century included scholars and scientists who studied and documented the pyramids in unprecedented detail. Their work, published in the massive Description de l'Égypte, brought knowledge of the pyramids to European audiences and sparked intense interest in Egyptian antiquities. The decipherment of hieroglyphics by Champollion a few decades later opened Egyptian texts to reading, providing new context for understanding the civilization that built the pyramids. The 19th and 20th centuries saw intensive archaeological investigation of the Giza plateau. Excavations uncovered worker villages, temples, causeways, and subsidiary structures. The interior passages of the pyramids were fully explored and mapped. Modern surveying techniques revealed the precision of the construction in greater detail than ever before. Each discovery added to knowledge, but also generated new questions. The pyramids have influenced architecture throughout history. Pyramid forms appear in buildings across cultures and eras. Sometimes the influence is direct and conscious, as in the pyramid-topped obelisks popular in 18th and 19th century European architecture. Sometimes it is more subtle, an echo of the pyramid's stability and symbolism in buildings that are not explicitly pyramidal. Modern architecture continues to reference the pyramids: the Louvre Pyramid in Paris, the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas, the pyramids of the Imagination Center in Japan. All consciously evoke the Egyptian originals. These modern pyramids serve different purposes, constructed with different materials and methods, but they draw on the symbolic power and visual impact of the ancient form. The pyramid has become an icon, instantly recognizable, universally associated with ancient Egypt, mystery, and enduring achievement. It appears in logos, advertisements, films, literature. It represents everything from conspiratorial secret societies to alien intervention to human ingenuity. The actual pyramid, the stone structure at Giza, has been transformed into a symbol that carries meanings far beyond its original purpose. This symbolic transformation is itself interesting. How does a building become more than a building? How does stone and geometry transcend its physical reality to represent ideas, aspirations, fears, and dreams? The Great Pyramid has achieved this transcendence, becoming not just a historical artifact, but a living symbol that continues to shape human imagination. Perhaps this is the pyramid's greatest legacy. Not the stones themselves, impressive as they are, not the precision or the scale. Remarkable as these features may be, but the capacity to inspire wonder, to provoke questions, to make people look at the world and ask, what are we capable of? What have we forgotten? What mysteries remain? These questions are healthy. They keep us humble, reminding us that we do not know everything. They keep us curious, encouraging exploration and investigation. They keep us open to possibility, preventing the premature closure that comes from thinking we have all the answers. The Great Pyramid, standing in the desert for millennia, continues to pose these questions to every generation that encounters it. The personal encounter. For those who have stood before the Great Pyramid, the experience often transcends intellectual understanding. It is not just a matter of appreciating the scale or admiring the engineering. There is something visceral about the encounter, something that affects people at a level deeper than rational thought. Visitors describe feeling small, humbled by the structure's immensity. The pyramid's mass, its weight, its sheer presence create a sense of awe that statistics and photographs cannot convey. To stand at the base, to look up at the ascending slopes, to try to comprehend that this was built by human hands, block by block, over years and decades, induces a profound respect for human capability and determination. Others report feeling connected to the past in a direct, immediate way. The stones were placed by human hands thousands of years ago. Those humans are long dead, their names mostly forgotten, their lives known only in generalities, yet their work remains tangible, real, touchable. The pyramid bridges vast stretches of time, connecting the present to the deep past, making history immediate rather than abstract. Some visitors experience more unusual phenomena, feelings of presence or significance, emotional responses that seem disproportionate to the mere sight of stone, dreams or visions after visiting the pyramid. These experiences are subjective, not verifiable, easily dismissed as imagination or suggestion, yet they are reported consistently enough to warrant acknowledgement, if not explanation. The chambers inside the pyramid affect people in various ways. The claustrophobic passages, the weight of stone overhead, The darkness and silence all create conditions that can trigger psychological responses. Some feel anxious or uncomfortable. Others feel peaceful, secure, enclosed in a womb of stone. Still others report altered states of consciousness, particularly in the king's chamber, where the combination of darkness, silence, and granite enclosure creates an environment unlike any other. Let awareness sink even deeper. The voice is barely noticed now, a distant murmur, words flowing without need for comprehension. The body is still. The breath continues. Consciousness hovers at the threshold of sleep, neither fully present nor fully absent, simply drifting. The question of whether the pyramid possesses some property or energy that affects visitors is controversial. Skeptics attribute all reported experiences to expectation, suggestion, and the psychological effects of the environment. The pyramid is famous, mysterious, ancient. People arrive expecting to feel something, and so they do. The stone itself is inert, possessing no properties beyond those of any other stone, yet the consistency of reports, spanning centuries and cultures, suggests that something about the pyramid experience transcends individual expectation. Perhaps it is simply the authentic experience of encountering something truly ancient, truly massive, truly mysterious. In a modern world where so much is explained, commodified, and demystified, the pyramid retains genuine mystery. It does not yield all its secrets. It does not become comprehensible through mere observation. It remains other, separate, enigmatic. This otherness, this resistance to complete understanding, may be what affects visitors most profoundly. We are accustomed to information, to explanations, to control. The pyramid reminds us that not everything can be known, controlled, or reduced to simple explanation. It stands as a monument to human achievement, but also as a reminder of human limits. We can measure it, study it, theorize about it, but we cannot fully understand it. Something always remains beyond our grasp. This incompleteness is frustrating for those who seek definitive answers, but it can also be liberating. The pyramid gives permission for wonder, for uncertainty, for the acknowledgement that mystery is part of the human experience. Not everything needs to be solved. Not every question needs an answer. Sometimes it is enough to stand in the presence of something vast and old and strange, to feel small and connected and alive, to let the experience wash over without trying to capture or explain it. As sleep approaches, as consciousness prepares for its nightly dissolution, the pyramid can serve as a symbol for this comfortable uncertainty. Like sleep itself, the pyramid is familiar yet mysterious. We experience it regularly but cannot fully explain it. We know it exists but cannot completely grasp how or why. We enter it willingly, surrendering control, trusting in processes beyond our conscious understanding. Let the pyramid fade now. Let its image dissolve into the darkness behind closed eyes. Let the questions remain unanswered, the mysteries unsolved. In the space where the pyramid was, let there be only stillness, only breath, only the gentle current carrying awareness toward rest, toward sleep, toward dreams where pyramids may appear in forms we do not expect, where ancient stones speak in languages we somehow understand, where mysteries reveal themselves not in words but in the wordless knowing that sometimes visits us in the night. The enduring enigma. We have journeyed through history, through stone and sand, through theories and evidence, through orthodox explanations and alternative proposals. We have examined the Great Pyramid from multiple perspectives, considered its construction, its purpose, its age, its meaning, and still the central mystery remains. Who really built the pyramids? The question echoes across millennia, unanswered in any final sense. The conventional narrative attributes them to 4th dynasty pharaohs, built by Egyptian workers using Bronze Age tools and methods. This explanation is supported by substantial evidence and accepted by mainstream scholarship. It fits within the established framework of ancient Egyptian history and culture. Yet as we have seen, this explanation faces challenges. The precision and scale of construction seem to exceed what the proposed method should achieve. The mathematical and astronomical knowledge encoded in the structure seems advanced for the period. The absence of certain expected evidence, the presence of certain unexpected features, the gaps and inconsistencies in the historical record all leave room for doubt. Alternative theories propose earlier construction, lost technologies, advanced ancient civilizations, even extraterrestrial intervention. These theories are rejected by mainstream scholarship as speculative, unsupported by solid evidence, requiring extraordinary claims without extraordinary proof. They exist on the margins of academic discourse, embraced by some researchers but dismissed by most. Between these positions lies uncertainty. The pyramids are real. They stand in the desert, massive and precise, ancient and enduring. They were built by someone somehow for some purpose, but the specifics remain debatable. The more we learn, the more questions emerge. Each answer generates new mysteries. Perhaps this is appropriate. Perhaps monuments of such scale and antiquity should resist complete understanding. Perhaps mystery is part of their purpose, intentional or not. The pyramids invite inquiry but frustrate conclusion. They offer evidence but not certainty. They stand as permanent questions, challenging each generation to grapple with them anew. The body is heavy, still, completely relaxed. The breath flows without conscious direction. The mind is quiet, thoughts sparse and disconnected. This is the natural state before sleep, the dissolution of waking consciousness into the less structured realm of dreams. What matters most about the pyramids may not be who built them, or how, or even precisely when. What matters is that they exist, that human beings in the deep past conceived of structures so ambitious, so enduring, so precisely executed that they still inspire awe thousands of years later. Whether those humans were Egyptians of the 4th dynasty or members of an earlier civilization, whether they used copper chisels or more advanced tools, whether they worked from religious devotion or other motivations, the achievement remains remarkable. The pyramids demonstrate what humans are capable of when vision, organization, skill and determination combine. They show that our ancestors were not primitive, not simple, not limited in their thinking or their abilities. They were humans like us, facing different challenges, working within different frameworks, but possessing intelligence, creativity and ambition equal to our own. This recognition is humbling and inspiring simultaneously. Humbling because it reminds us that technological advancement does not equal human advancement. The ancients lacked our tools but not our capacity. Inspiring because it suggests that human potential has always been vast, that we inherit capabilities and aspirations from the deepest past, that we are part of a long story of human striving and achievement. The cover-up mentioned in our title may not be a conscious conspiracy. but simply the limitations of historical knowledge. We do not have complete information about the past. Records are fragmentary, evidence is ambiguous, interpretation is influenced by assumptions and biases. What appears as deliberate concealment may simply be the fog of time, the inevitable loss of detail that comes with distance from events. Or perhaps there is genuine knowledge that has been suppressed, dismissed, or ignored. Perhaps alternative theories deserve more serious consideration than mainstream scholarship has given them. Perhaps anomalies that do not fit the conventional narrative should be investigated more thoroughly rather than explained away. Perhaps we should be more humble about our certainty, more open to revision, more willing to question established explanations. The truth likely lies somewhere between extremes. The conventional narrative probably captures important truths about pyramid construction, while missing or minimizing certain details. Alternative theories probably identify genuine anomalies, while over-interpreting their significance or proposing explanations that go too far beyond available evidence. Both perspectives have value, both deserve consideration. Neither should be accepted uncritically or dismissed reflexively. As sleep approaches, as the journey through this mystery nears its end, let the various theories and possibilities rest together without conflict. Let the orthodox and the alternative, the conventional and the speculative, the proven and the possible, all coexist in the space of unknowing. The pyramids are large enough to hold multiple interpretations. The past is complex enough to accommodate different perspectives. The truth is probably more nuanced than any single narrative allows. What we know for certain is small compared to what remains unknown. The stones are real. The precision is measurable. The age is ancient. Beyond these basics, we enter territory where evidence thins, where interpretation dominates, where mystery persists. This is not failure. It is simply the condition of investigating the deep past. We work with fragments, with echoes, with clues. We build theories and test them against evidence. We remain always open to revision, always willing to reconsider, always humble before the vastness of time and the limitations of knowledge. The Great Pyramid will outlast all current theories about it. It has already outlasted countless explanations, countless interpreters, countless certainties that crumbled when tested against new evidence or new perspectives. It will continue to stand silent and enigmatic while generations come and go, each bringing new questions, new tools, new frameworks for understanding. Perhaps centuries or millennia from now, humans will finally understand the pyramids completely. Perhaps new discoveries or new technologies will reveal secrets now hidden. Perhaps the full story of construction and purpose will emerge from the stone, from the sand, from sources we have not yet imagined. Or perhaps the pyramids will remain mysterious, forever holding something back, forever inviting speculation, forever reminding us that not everything yields to human inquiry. Either outcome is acceptable. Either way, the pyramids have served their purpose, whatever that purpose was. They have endured, they have inspired, they have challenged, they have connected countless humans across time and space, all standing before the same stones, all asking the same questions, all feeling the same wonder. This shared experience, this common encounter with mystery and magnificence, may be the pyramid's greatest gift to humanity. rest in mystery. The journey through the mysteries of the Great Pyramid draws to a close. Hours have passed in contemplation of ancient stones, of theories orthodox and alternative, of precision and scale, of knowledge encoded and purposes hidden. The questions remain, as they have always remained, as they perhaps should remain. Let the body rest completely now, every muscle soft, every joint loose, every part settled into perfect stillness. The breath flows without thought, automatic and effortless, a tide that continues regardless of conscious attention. The heart beats its steady rhythm, maintaining life while consciousness drifts. In the darkness behind closed eyes, perhaps the pyramid still stands, a ghostly presence in the mind's eye. Massive, precise, ancient, unknowable. Let this image soften, blur, fade. Let the urgency to understand dissolve. The pyramids have waited for millennia. They will wait through the night. The questions will be there in the morning, unchanged, patient, eternal. There is wisdom in mystery. Not every puzzle needs solving. Not every question demands an answer. Sometimes the most profound response to the unknown is simple acknowledgement, the humble recognition that we do not know, cannot know, may never fully know. This acknowledgement does not represent defeat but maturity, the acceptance that the universe is larger than our understanding, that the past holds secrets we may never recover, that stone can keep silence for millennia regardless of how insistently we question. The ancient builders, whoever they were, whatever their methods, whatever their purposes, completed their work. The pyramids stand, that is enough. Their achievement does not require our understanding to remain real. The stones do not need our theories to continue existing. The mystery persists independent of our interpretation, and so let interpretation cease for now. Let the seeking mind rest. Let theories dissolve like morning mist under the Egyptian sun. Let questions fade like stars at dawn. What remains when all thought subsides is simple presence, simple awareness, simple being. In this space, the pyramids are not problems to solve but presences to experience, monuments that inspire not because we understand them, but because they exist beyond understanding. Sleep comes to all, pyramid builders and pyramid theorists alike. The ancient workers who placed the stones slept in the shadows of their unfinished work, dreaming perhaps of completion, perhaps of rest, perhaps of nothing at all. The pharaohs slept in their royal beds, waiting for eternity in stone. The priests and architects slept, holding their knowledge close, taking much of it to the grave. The seekers and scholars of later ages slept, their questions unanswered, their certainties provisional, their understanding incomplete. And now, in this moment, millennia after the last block was placed, sleep comes again. The same sleep that has claimed every human who ever lived, pyramid builder or not. The same dissolution of consciousness, the same surrender of control, the same journey into the unknown country of dreams. Sleep connects us to those ancient people more surely than any theory or explanation. They slept as we sleep. They dreamed as we dream. They were human as we are human. Let the weight of history settle like a comfortable blanket. Thousands of years, countless lives, immeasurable change. Yet the pyramids remain, connecting past to present, offering continuity across the vast gulf of time. They have seen civilizations rise and fall. They have witnessed the birth and death of languages, religions, nations, ways of life. They have stood silent while the world transformed around them, and still they stand, patient, permanent, present. This permanence is itself a mystery. Stone should not last so long. Structures should not endure through such spans of time. The erosive forces of nature, the destructive impulses of humans, the simple entropy that brings all things eventually to dust, all should have reduced the pyramids to rubble long ago. Yet they persist, more durable than any human institution, more lasting than any empire, more permanent than any belief system. Perhaps this is their purpose. Not to house the dead, not to demonstrate power, not to encode knowledge, but simply to endure. To stand as witnesses to human presence, human capability, human aspiration. To remind future generations that we were here, that we built, that we dreamed of permanence even knowing our individual lives were brief. The pyramids say humans were here and they were remarkable. As consciousness fades towards sleep, as the final moments of waking awareness slip away, let this message be received. You are part of that human story, connected to the pyramid builders across time, sharing their humanity, their capacity for wonder, their ability to envision and create beyond the immediately necessary. The pyramids were built by people like you. Different circumstances, different knowledge, different context, but the same essential humanity. This realization is comforting. The past was not alien. The ancients were not incomprehensibly different. They were human, and humans, given time and motivation, can accomplish extraordinary things. The pyramids prove this. They stand as monuments not just to dead pharaohs or lost civilizations, but to human potential itself, to what we can achieve when we try, to the remarkable capabilities that lie dormant in every person, every culture, every age. Let this be the final thought before sleep claims all thought. The pyramids are mysterious, yes. Their construction is debated. Their purpose is unclear. Their builders are not fully known, but their existence is certain. And that existence affirms something essential about humanity. We build, we aspire, we create, we reach toward permanence even in the midst of impermanence. We leave marks on the world that outlast us. We matter. The body's completely still now, the breath barely perceptible. The mind has released its hold on waking consciousness. In this state, between wake and sleep, the pyramids fade from awareness. The questions dissolve, the theories evaporate. What remains is peace, the deep peace that comes when striving ceases, when seeking ends, when the mind releases its grip on problems and simply allows itself to be. Sleep arrives like the desert night, quiet and complete. Stars wheel overhead as they have wheeled for millions of years, as they wheeled while the pyramids were built, as they will wheel when the pyramids finally crumble into sand. The vastness of space and time surrounds all human endeavor, contextualizes all achievement, humbles all pride. Yet within that vastness we exist, we matter, we create, and sometimes what we create lasts. Rest now in the knowledge that mystery is acceptable, that not knowing is fine, that questions can remain unanswered without diminishing their value. The pyramids will be there tomorrow, standing in the desert, keeping their secrets, inviting wonder. But tonight there is only sleep, deep and dreamless, or filled with visions of ancient stones and distant stars, or whatever form rest takes for each individual consciousness. The Great Pyramid, the eternal enigma, the monument that has outlasted everything contemporary with it, bids you rest. Its builders sleep in the earth, their names mostly forgotten, their methods debated, their purposes unclear. But their work remains, and in remaining it speaks across the millennia a simple message. Humans were here, and they built wonders. You are part of that lineage. You carry that potential. You share that humanity. Sleep now as they slept. Dream as they dreamed. Rest in the mystery that surrounds all human existence, the great unknown from which we emerge at birth and to which we return at death. The pyramids stand at the threshold between the known and unknown, between the mortal and the eternal, between the earth and the sky. They are comfortable with that position, holding their mysteries without anxiety, existing without need for validation or understanding. Let this be your rest as well, comfortable in uncertainty, at peace with mystery. Accepting that the past holds secrets we may never know, that the ancients achieved things we may never fully understand, that stone can keep silence longer than any civilization can persist. Rest in this knowledge. Rest in this acceptance. Rest in the deep enfolding darkness that is sleep, where pyramids may appear in dreams, where ancient voices may whisper truths we cannot hear when waking, where the mysteries of the past and the mysteries of the self blend into one great mystery that is simply being human, simply being alive, simply being here, now, present, aware, and then, gently, peacefully, inevitably, asleep. The voice falls silent. The journey ends. The pyramids stand in the desert, as they have always stood, as they will stand through the night, through tomorrow, through ages yet to come. And consciousness, having contemplated their mysteries for hours, finally surrenders to its own mystery, the daily miracle of sleep, the nightly journey into the unknown, the rest that renews, the dreams that come unbidden, the deep restorative darkness that every human needs and that every human throughout all of history has gratefully received. Sleep well, dream deeply, rest completely. The mysteries will wait. They have waited for thousands of years. They will wait through one more night, and in the morning, should you choose to seek again, they will still be there. The eternal pyramids, keeping their secrets, inviting wonder, standing as proof that humans, in the distant past, achieved something remarkable, something lasting, something that continues, millennia later, to inspire awe and provoke questions and remind us that we are part of something larger than ourselves, something ancient, something enduring, something fundamentally, beautifully, mysteriously human. Good night. Sleep peacefully. Let the weight of millennia rest gently upon you. Let the mysteries of the pyramids dissolve into the greater mystery of consciousness itself, of sleep, of dreams, of existence. You are safe. You are at rest. You are connected to all humans across time who have sought understanding, found mystery, and learned to be at peace with not knowing. The pyramids bless this rest, as they have blessed the rest of countless seekers before you, as they will bless countless seekers yet to come. The voice fades completely now. Only silence remains. Deep, comfortable, welcoming silence. The silence of desert nights, the silence of ancient stone, the silence of consciousness dissolving into sleep. Rest in this silence. Rest in this peace. Rest in the knowledge that you have contemplated great mysteries and found them beautiful, even in their incompleteness, even in their resistance to full understanding, even in their stubborn refusal to yield all their secrets. This is enough. more than enough perfect sleep.